Chapter 581, Selecting a Cultivation Technique. The Taoist master has painstakingly guided you. You must reflect on this carefully. Li Xuanfeng offered some advice. Ning Heiyuan nodded in response, his expression complicated, and said softly, I understand. I do not resent the Taoist master for reprimanding me, nor do I fear offending any so-called fated one. What I truly fear is the day the Taoist master no longer bothers to chastise me, truly leaving me here without a word or care. That would be the point of no return. Li Xuanfeng paused. Ning Heiyuan retrieved a jade bottle from his sleeve and said in a quiet voice, The matter brother-in-law entrusted to me. It has been completed. The 10 enduring tranquility spirit pills have been exchanged for 8 profound tempering pills of even higher quality. They are all pure and uncontaminated. Li Xuanfeng gave a slight nod and accepted the bottle. Ning Heiyuan cupped his fist in salute and withdrew. Li Xuanfeng said nothing more as he watched Ning Heiyuan retreat in silence. Only then did he turn around, mounting the wind to fly back to his own cave dwelling. Among the cave dwellings in the marketplace, a few were particularly rich in spiritual qi, with spirit springs gushing forth. Renting one of these caves usually cost over 10 spirit stones per year. One of them had long been vacated for Li Xuanfeng's cultivation, while Li Qinghang was arranged in an adjacent cave of slightly lower quality. Yet even this second-tier cave dwelling was far richer in spiritual energy than Mount Qingdu. Treasuring the opportunity, Li Qinghang dove wholeheartedly into her cultivation and only came up to pay her respects when Li Xuanfeng returned. Li Xuanfeng took out a harmonic noonstone, several heavy pieces of ocean resonance mercury, and a piece of emerald blue thread-linked jade, handing them all to Li Qinghang. He instructed, I have no use for these, you may take them back home. Li Qinghang nodded in acknowledgement. Li Xuanfeng then retrieved a jade bottle from his sleeve and asked softly, The Yuwa stone liquid I gave you earlier, do not save it. Take it whenever you have the chance. This is the profound tempering pill. Consume both of these treasures, and you should be able to break through to the mid-stage of foundation establishment realm. The Li family had rarely used top-grade elixirs for breakthroughs and cultivation, relying mostly on talisman pills. Now, with both items being genuine treasures of an immortal sex direct line, Li Qinghang carefully accepted them and replied, Thank you, second uncle. Li Xuanfeng was about to say more when someone approached from below. The man was broad-foreheaded and thick-browed, the eldest of the Ning family, who respectfully reported, A black-robed cultivator has arrived in the marketplace, claiming to be Li Yuanjiao, and has come to pay his respects. Bring him here quickly. Both individuals showed signs of delight as Li Xuanfeng waved his hand in response. Ning Dingbo quickly departed, and before long, a man appeared at the lower steps. His eyes were a dull gray-black, his expression slightly sullen, with closely spaced brows that hinted at a touch of cunning. Dressed in a neat black robe, his appearance was efficient and crisp. Pausing briefly at the entrance of the cave dwelling, he first pushed open the stone door and extended his spiritual senses inward. Only after confirming the presence of the two within did his expression relax, and he stepped in with visible joy. Yuanjiao greets second uncle. Compared to his sister's demeanor upon meeting Li Xuanfeng, Li Yuanjiao appeared much more restrained, though the joy in his eyes was undeniable. Li Xuanfeng smiled and nodded slightly, scrutinizing him before saying, Mid-stage foundation establishment realm good. Li Yuanjiao bowed deeply. Li Xuanfeng's eyes glimmered as his spiritual vision activated, revealing a variety of luminous details. Though he cultivated the same spirit eye perception, his technique had been refined through the use of numerous spirit waters. After a closer look, he remarked softly, Unfortunately, your cultivation method is somewhat crude. The clarity of your light is lacking. Li Yuanjiao, having just broken through, had rushed over in haste. His foundation was not yet stable, and this flaw was easily noticed by Li Xuanfeng. Acknowledging this, Li Yuanjiao nodded. His family's River 1 Qi technique was indeed lacking in quality. Li Xuanfeng continued, Qinghang's technique is ancient. While its alterations result in a slight scarcity of mana, its wonders are in no way inferior to a grade 4 or 5 technique. Does the family have any high-grade techniques available in recent years? Li Yuanjiao nodded and recounted recent developments. After a brief pause, Li Xuanfeng finally mentioned Yu Muxian, speaking in a low tone, I have a chance to enter the Green Pine Temple. Yu Muxian will also be entering. My family's chance to obtain treasures from him rests on this single opportunity. Taoist Master Yuan Su has already agreed that once the matter of the Green Pine Temple is concluded, we will act on the lake as well. After laying out his reasoning, Li Xuanfeng added in a quiet voice, "With my current strength, defeating him would be easy. However, he undoubtedly possesses life-saving artifacts, making it difficult to kill him outright." Li Yunjiao pondered for a moment, then untied a green and white treasure sword with a blue tassel from his waist. Holding it with both hands, he said softly, "The Qingch sword can slay Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. Please take it with you, second uncle." Li Xuanfeng did not accept it, but instead glanced at the sharp blade before replying, "The Green Pine Temple is hidden within the Great Void. Once the portal to this grotto heaven opens, we can examine it closely with artifacts. Perhaps we will find a way to enter." Li Yunjiao froze briefly, his heart stirred by this revelation. The immortal mirror can pierce through heaven and earth, even warding off formation barriers. Perhaps it truly could work. The family might even secure an additional spot. Moreover, that Sunseeker ring is an artifact of Green Pine Temple's Taoist Lu. It could resonate with the immortal mirror. Perhaps the temple and the mirror are closely linked. After careful deliberation, Li Yunjiao nodded toward Li Xuanfeng and said, "Yunjiao understands. It is worth a try." Li Xuanfeng nodded, instructing Li Yunjiao and Li Qinghang to divide the pills and spirit liquid among themselves. He gave the following orders: "The spiritual energy here is dense. While I am guarding this place, take the opportunity to cultivate and break through. Wait for the right moment." Zhang Qian is only at the peak of the Qi cultivation realm and is preparing to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. This indicates that there is still some time before the Green Pine Temple opens. Qinghang can aim to advance to the mid-stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. The siblings, Li Yunjiao and Li Qinghang, exchanged a glance before voicing their agreement and obeying the order. Li Qinghang took the pills and entered a secluded chamber to cultivate. Arhachek letter 1033D letter 1ED1 letter 1D41B, Egrov letter 1D412, converging C. The heavens and earth were shrouded in gloom. Sparse raindrops fell onto the sea's surface, where a few droplets of mercury-like liquid floated, suspended between sky and sea. Slowly, as the force sustaining them dissipated, they rolled down and vanished into the briny waters. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth rippled as the great void slowly parted. A cultivator in green robes emerged, stepping into the wind and waves as he walked through the air. A faint golden jade seal at his waist swayed precariously as he stood with one hand resting on the hilt of his sword, halting above the pale brown waters. Before him, the great void shimmered and shifted, and a woman dressed in violet robes stepped forth. A brilliant streak of purple-gold light gleamed at the center of her brows. Her gaze swept across the green-robed man before her as she spoke softly. "So it is Taoist Master Yuan Su. I wondered what this was about. So it is your people handling this demon." She raised her hand to reveal a pale, translucent object. It was crystalline and coiled like a length of rope, as thick as a woman's wrist and stretching for what seemed like several dozen zhang. Shimmering with white light, she said clearly, "Dongfeng AI is already dead. This dragon tendon belongs to you and now serves as repayment." The violet-robed woman waved her arm, tossing the item into the air. Yuan Su flicked his sleeve, and the object vanished into its folds without a word. She paused for a moment before continuing, "Where did you get that golden bow?" "He seems quite formidable." Yuan Su waved his hand dismissively, answering nonchalantly, "He is my Ning family's son-in-law." "Oh, so it is a honey trap. I did not expect you to resort to such tricks." The violet-robed woman's lips curved in faint acknowledgement as she prepared to part the great void and leave. Chapter 582, Selecting a Cultivation Technique, II. To her surprise, however, Yuan Su spoke abruptly. "A honey trap has never been about seduction by appearance. It lies in the allure of emotions. A beautiful face or a graceful figure can be found anywhere, but a heart of exquisite understanding, one that mirrors your thoughts and shares your burdens, is truly rare. Someone clever and perceptive, able to ease your worries with both wit and sincerity, is worth far more." Yuan Su continued, "Hemian is the brightest child of our clan. She is bold and resourceful, knowing when to advance and when to retreat in the outside world. At home, she carries herself with warmth and grace, needing only a glance to understand another's intent, yet always treating others with genuine devotion and unwavering loyalty. How could anyone bear to abandon such a person? Even Li Xuanfeng could not escape this truth." He fixed a cold gaze on the violet-robed Taoist master before him, his voice low and measured. "To lead the wise, one must also be wise. This principle has remained unchanged not just for the last 400 years, but for millennia." The violet-robed woman's expression gradually turned icy. Standing with her hands behind her back, she stared at him coldly and replied, Tia Xio, you are as fond of mocking others as ever. Back then, you achieved nothing yourself. When the battle at Moongaze Lake raged for 3 days, you hid atop Mount Azure Pond without taking a single step. How leisurely you were. Thunder roared across the heavens as drizzling rain continued to fall. As the violet-robed woman's face darkened, the surrounding clouds churned violently, exuding tendrils of violet mist. Yuan Su, unfazed, met her gaze with a sneer and said, The fairy truly has a sharp memory. Yet I seem to recall who led a group of cultivators to Moongaze Lake and who was responsible for breaking Donghua's great formation. Their gazes locked for a tense moment before they turned away. The violet-robed woman gradually suppressed her aura and said simply, There is no need for further words, Taoist master. You and I have been at odds for centuries. In the end, dust will return to dust and earth to earth. When I break through to the Golden Core realm and turn to ash before your eyes, I trust that will finally ease your hatred. When that time comes, I will personally attend the ceremony. Taoist Master Yuan Su responded coldly. Without any resolution, the two parted unhappily. The violet-robed woman vanished into the great void, while Yuan Su, with his hands behind his back, also stepped into the void. His expression remained calm, his hands steady as stone, but his gaze was fixed ahead, as if lost in thought. She has always been clever. She should have understood my words. At least it's some consolation, sparing her from tormenting herself year after year. Shang Yuan must have long known that the Li family descends from Li Jiangquan, which is why he personally slew Maha as a warning. But now, I alone am fit to take action. Yet too much involvement risks exposing everything to those two. His expression was as cold as frost, though his heart trembled as if walking the edge of a 10,000 jang cliff. Trapped within the sect by my master all those years, I was unable to repay my debt of gratitude. Now, this is the only way. His remaining lifespan was limited. He did not fear death, but he dreaded falling into the hands of a Golden Core cultivator or worse, bringing calamity to the Li family. Mount Qingdu. Li Zijian flew out of the Qingdu cave dwelling on a gust of wind, having finally broken through to the 7th heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm. Landing atop the mountain peak, he found a crowd already gathered, waiting for him. Most of those present were boys and girls around 16 or 17 years old, armed with swords, sabers, spears, or bows. They waited excitedly, grouped into neat rows under the guidance of several guest cultivators, chatting quietly amongst themselves. The Li family's Cheng and Ming generation had grown older, and even the youngest, Cheng Huai, had reached the age for cultivation. With Li Zijian emerging from his breakthrough, it was only natural for him to observe and assign them cultivation techniques. As he landed lightly on the wind, several individuals, including In Zhayan and Chen Dong, stepped forward and bowed. Li Zijian returned the salute briefly. Behind the guest cultivators, the gathered youths bowed in unison and called out, Greetings, clan uncle. Li Zijian gestured for them to rise. At the forefront was a young man, Li Qinglio, now 24 years old and at the 5th stage of the embryonic breathing realm. Considering his talent, his cultivation level was already commendable. After a brief glance, Li Zijian nodded and said softly, You have done well. Do you have a preference for any specific cultivation technique? The Li family now possessed more than one Grade 4 technique available for cultivation. These included the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual, the Pheasant Flames Long March Technique, and the Purple Thunder Secret Origin Technique, which rivaled Grade 4 techniques in quality. The Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual had one available copy, while the Pheasant Flames Long March Technique had several. As the young family head, Li Qinglio knew these details well. He lowered his head slightly and replied softly, I defer to clan uncle's judgment. Li Zijian smiled faintly and waved his hand, dismissing the guest cultivators. Turning to the group of expectant youths, he spoke in a clear voice, You have likely heard your elders discuss the family's cultivation techniques. The best of the Grade 4 techniques have 2 distinct lineages. Li Zijian continued, However, though these techniques are the best, they are also difficult to master. Their spiritual qi is limited, and if one's talent is insufficient, cultivating them may instead become a hindrance. While these 2 techniques do not demand extraordinary talent, they still have their requirements. His gaze swept over the gathered youths. Most of the Cheng and Ming generation displayed above-average potential, though only 2 or 3 truly stood out. Li Zijian called out, Li Qinglio. Li Qinglio stepped forward and bowed deeply. Li Zijian said softly, You are the most talented among the Cheng and Ming generation, and the young family head. The Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual is yours to cultivate. letter 211 letter wen de sex thrissa, abruv letter wen a sexnen Li Qinglio bowed again. Li Zijian then pointed to a young woman, the eldest sister of the first lineage, named Li Minggong. Radiant and poised, her talent was comparable to Li Qinglio's. She was assigned the Pheasant Flame's long march technique. The last person he selected was the youngest son of the second lineage, Li Chenghui. Quiet and reserved, Chenghui stepped forward and whispered to Li Zijian that he wished to cultivate the Purple Thunder secret origin technique, with permission already granted by Li Qinghang. Li Zijian nodded and made note of it. The remaining youths were allowed to choose their techniques, with only 5 copies of the Pheasant Flame's Long March technique manual available. 4 others were selected based on merit, while the rest were left to pick freely from the Grade 3 techniques. After assigning the techniques, Li Zijian led Li Qinglio and Li Chenghui away. Once inside the secret chamber of the cave dwelling, he took out a talisman pill and said softly, "This is the family's secret breaking realm pill. Take it in silence and do not speak of it to others, lest they covet it." Li Qinglio nodded solemnly and entered a stone chamber within the dwelling to begin his secluded cultivation. Only then did Li Zijian sit down with Li Chenghui. Chenghui, just over 7 years old, sat on the stone stool, a little bewildered, as Li Zijian gently covered his eyes with his hand. Chenghui spoke softly, "Uncle 8. Li Zijian responded with a soft hum, his tone gentle as he said, "I am sealing your 6 senses. Be patient for a moment." Once Chenghui agreed, Li Zijian sealed his 6 senses and carried him into the secret chamber. Before a cold, silent stone altar, he kneeled and recited a prayer. The Li family of Qingdu offers respect along with fine delicacies and wine with unwavering devotion. When the time comes, I will remain true to my oath. With this talisman burned, I express my gratitude to Supreme. After finishing the incantation, Li Zijian's heart sank bit by bit. The bluish-white immortal mirror above remained utterly still, unresponsive. Pale, moonlit mist flowed downward, settling lightly on the stone bricks below. Silently offering his apologies, Li Zijian rose slowly, lifted Li Chenghui, and left the secret chamber without a word. Exiting the cave dwelling, he stepped onto the summit of Mount Qingdu. Sitting on the stone steps at the peak, he released Chenghui's sealed senses. The full moon shone brightly, its light spilling across the landscape. The boy looked up at him, then leaned quietly against his chest. Li Zijian forced a smile, wrapping his arms around the child as they sat in the mountain breeze. In a soft voice he said, "Tomorrow, Uncle 8 will take you to the Technique Transmission Hall to choose an embryonic breathing realm cultivation technique." "All right," Li Chenghui replied softly. Chapter 583, Silverhook Spirit Thunder I. Li Zijian arranged the family matters before reviewing everything that had transpired during his seclusion. There had been no significant issues. The family's income had slightly tightened due to the increasing number of cultivators, but the shortfall was no more than 1 or 2 spirit stones, a minor concern. "Not bad. Brother Zicheng is managing the household with increasing stability," Li Zijian remarked approvingly. Standing at the side of the hall was Chen Dong, clad in jade armor, his hair entirely white. He had been stuck at the 9th heavenly layer of the Qi cultivation realm for years, his swordsmanship gradually reaching a deeper level. However, lacking the confidence to break through to the Foundation establishment realm, he had devoted more of his time to clan affairs. The former leader of the Jade Court Guard, Chen Mufeng, had been demoted, leaving the elderly Chen Dongs to take charge. Within the family, only he held the reputation and ability to manage such responsibilities. After reading through the records, Li Zijian suddenly asked, "Has there been an increase in female attendance on Mount Wudu?" Having been in seclusion for some time, Li Zijian was unaware of Li Ziming's recent progress and found no mention of it in the records. Curious, he asked the question, to which Chen Donghe replied, "Mount Wudu sent the previous attendants down the mountain years ago. No new ones have been brought up since, not even then family has been there more than a few times." Li Zijian was surprised and thought to himself, "This brother Ming, what's gotten into him?" Dismissing the elder, Li Zijian soared into the air and descended onto Mount Wudu. The fire vein on Mount Wudu had been active for over a decade, gradually stabilizing. Day and night, fiery baleful qi spewed forth, transforming the entire mountain. Vegetation had grown sparse, birds circled warily overhead, and jagged rocks jutted out across the landscape. The atmosphere was stiflingly humid. Li Zijian broke through the formation and landed at the summit. The mountaintop gleamed with resplendent golden halls, radiating opulence. Before the white jade stairs stood 2 guards, silently on watch. "Greetings, clan uncle," they said respectfully. Both were youths from collateral branches, raised within the family's cave dwellings. Lacking talent, They had been assigned to cultivate the guardian of the courtly path, quickly reaching the Qi cultivation realm, but advancing no further. After their respectful salute, Li Zijian asked, "Is Ziming refining pills?" One of the guards went to inquire and soon returned, reporting, "The elder is already waiting in the hall." Li Zijian nodded and entered. Passing through several corridors, he arrived at the main hall. Compared to the gilded and ornate exterior, the interior of the hall was understated and elegant, with only a few pots of orchids placed as decorations. Li Ziming, looking even younger than Li Zijian, sat in the hall in golden robes, holding a small jade cauldron in his hands. Li Zijian sat down across from him as Li Ziming smiled and said, "Ah, Zijian, you are here. I was just pondering medicinal principles." Looking closer, Li Zijian realized that the jade cauldron in Li Ziming's hands was a Dharma artifact, currently roasting a spirit herb inside. It seemed he was preparing for alchemy. "I see," Li Zijian murmured. On his way in, he had noticed the quietness of the mountain, devoid of pavilions or other ornamental buildings. Most of the spaces were dedicated to storing various spirit herbs. Nodding slightly, he remarked, "I thought this place would be filled with birds and butterflies, but it turns out to be a wonderful retreat for cultivation." At this, Li Ziming gave a faintly exasperated smile and said softly, "Since I broke through to Foundation Establishment realm, such things are meaningless. Unless the other party is also at the Foundation Establishment realm, none of it is useful. And since it is of no use, I cannot be bothered to waste time on it." "No wonder," Li Zijian said in realization. His gaze swept over the hall's sparse decorations. Using the white cloth on the table, he wiped his hands and asked, "How are the pills coming along?" Li Ziming had already prepared for this. He took out a small white jade bottle from his robes and placed it on the table, saying softly, "These are 3 aspects breaking spirit pills, meant to aid Qi cultivators in breaking through. I made this batch especially for you. You can take them and use them as needed. There are 6 pills in this bottle. If you do not use them all, you can distribute the rest to the family members." Years ago, Li Zijian had sent back 2 precious alchemy recipes, the 3-aspect breaking pill and the 2 ways of refining renewal spirit pill. Both were exceedingly difficult to refine and highly valuable. The 3-aspect breaking pill even had variants for Qi cultivation and Foundation Establishment realms. Li Zijian nodded and accepted the bottle. Li Ziming then took out another jade bottle, this one green, and said, "This is a 3-aspect breaking profound pill, meant to assist Foundation Establishment realm cultivators in breaking through. I barely managed to refine this one." Li Zijian hesitated for a moment and then said softly, "Keep it for yourself. How much did it cost you?" Li Ziming answered with slight embarrassment, "The materials required for these pills are extremely precious. Refining these Qi cultivation realm spirit pills cost me 19 spirit stones in total. As for the Foundation Establishment realm profound pill, I was lucky to succeed on the first attempt, but it still cost nearly 30 spirit stones." A letter when de 6 when 6 upsilon letter when I 6 vav. After summing up the total in his head, Li Ziming continued, "As for the 2 ways of refining renewal spirit pill, it is even more challenging. I wasted more than a dozen spirit stones without producing anything worthwhile. Even the simpler formulas are hard to perfect, let alone that one." The path of alchemy was always like this. Each type of pill required significant initial investment. In the past, with the selfless guidance of Zhao Yuanxi, everything had been much smoother. Now that he was researching on his own, the expenses had naturally increased. Li Zijian felt a pang at the thought of such costs, but he still nodded in encouragement. "To succeed on your first attempt is already commendable. There will be more opportunities in the future." This matter reminded Li Zijian of something, and he added, "Senior Zhao Yuanxi was very kind to you, selflessly teaching you all those years ago. Have you kept that in your heart? Now that you have broken through to Foundation Establishment realm, both emotionally and ethically, you should pay him a visit." Li Ziming, still preoccupied with the methods for refining the pills, snapped to attention at these words. Startled, he nodded repeatedly. "You are absolutely right, absolutely right. I almost forgot and nearly fell into the trap of ingratitude. I will pack up and head to the Zhao family right away." Li Zijian nodded and updated him on recent events. He then took out 2 jade bottles, one large and one small, and said, "While you were in seclusion, our aunt returned from overseas and brought back some Yuwa stone liquid, and 3 profound tempering pills treasures only the direct lines of immortal sects can afford." With a hint of joy, he added, "For some reason, my cultivation speed has significantly increased since reaching Foundation Establishment realm. With these resources, and after taking the profound pill, my progress will only accelerate further." Li Zijun congratulated him with a smile, his mood greatly improved. After chatting a little more, he excused himself and departed. Li Ziming, holding the jade cauldron in his hands, calculated the time and dared not delay. He immediately mounted the wind and flew off from Mount Wudu, heading toward the Xiao family. The Eastern Sea, Kunyi Strait, the overcast skies that had loomed over the Eastern Sea for years had finally begun to clear. Though thunderstorms and dark clouds remained more frequent between the various seas, most of the waters were now bright and sunny. The Kunyi Strait stretched endlessly, linking together a series of islands. Apart from the deep-sea region of Liju, this area had the densest population, with long, narrow islands connected in a continuous chain amid turbulent waters. The once bright sky gradually darkened as clouds gathered overhead. Two beams of light descended from the north, landing on a small island. Leading the way was a middle-aged man clad in golden armor and robes, standing with his hands clasped behind him. The second figure, bathed in purple light, resolved into a female cultivator wearing jade armor and wielding a spear. She stood atop thunderclouds for a moment, gazing at the darkening sky. Chapter 584, Silverhook Spirit Thunder II. Second uncle, the storm clouds have indeed appeared. Perhaps this time we will catch it. The woman was none other than Li Qinghang. With the Duruo spear in hand, her aura had already reached the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Purple lightning surged and rolled beneath her feet, illuminating the mountain below with dazzling light. In recent years, the phenomena of falling water rising storm in the Eastern Sea had grown more intense, greatly benefiting thunder cultivators. Li Qinghang had seized the opportunity to enter seclusion, successfully breaking through to the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm and significantly enhancing her strength. Several years had passed in the blink of an eye. Her elder brother, Li Yuanjiao, remained in seclusion, while Li Xuanfeng roamed the Eastern Sea. Li Qinghang had returned home briefly to investigate the lightning phenomenon, and upon hearing the news, set out to explore the Eastern Sea in search of spirit lightning. Li Xuanfeng stared at the lightning flashing within the dark clouds, nodding slightly. During the falling water rising storm in the Eastern Sea, many types of thunder will descend. I have heard of several varieties appearing in the marketplace. This matches well with your technique. Indeed, Li Qinghang agreed. The rolling black clouds gathered over the island, and thunder roared. The island's native inhabitants raised their heads in awe and kneeled in worship. Li Qinghang glanced at them briefly, paying them no mind. This remote area lay at the very edge of the Eastern Sea. The locals spoke in a language unintelligible to outsiders. They kneeled in groups, some trembling, clutching staffs, clearly priests or shamans with a trace of cultivation. They prostrated themselves, shivering in fear of the Foundation establishment realm cultivator's overwhelming aura. After a brief wait, the clouds slowly coalesced into a bright, snake-like arc of white lightning. It coiled and writhed restlessly, darting through the black clouds with sporadic leaps. "It is the Silverhook Profound Thunder, after all," Li Qinghang said. She had obtained much information about different types of lightning through secret methods. Though she had missed some during her seclusion, she had made 5 or 6 trips since, all in vain, until now. Fortunately, this island has remained isolated and unchanged for thousands of years, with its name intact. The information Li Qinghang had acquired indicated that the Silverhook Profound Thunder struck Lulai Island within the Kunyi Sea. After searching the Kunyi Strait, she estimated that this island was the most likely candidate. The dark clouds gathered, with silver-white lightning swirling within them. Li Qinghang felt a surge of excitement in her heart as she soared into the sky. After waiting a few moments, she extended her slender finger and made a hooking motion in the air. Boom! The silver-white lightning, which had been hovering restlessly within the clouds, seemed to be drawn to her gesture. It plummeted downward, crashing violently onto her fingertip and transforming into a turbulent, flickering bolt of white lightning. Some residual lightning sparks, scattered like tiny birds returning to their nest, rained down in a cascade. They converged on her fingertip, gradually compressing into a small, silver-white bead. Li Qinghang clasped her palms together, exhaled slowly, and after a moment, stored the bead in her thunder pool. With the lightning absorbed, the dark clouds dissipated, and the sky cleared. Feeling pleased, Li Qinghang nodded toward Li Xuanfeng and soared upward on the wind. After leaving the strait, Li Xuanfeng halted midair and said softly, "No need to rush. Allow me to search this area briefly." Understanding his intention, Li Qinghang nodded and joined him in scanning the surroundings. After circling the area once, Li Xuanfeng's gaze swept casually across the scene. Suddenly, the golden bow on his back glowed brightly. A hint of delight crossed his face as he sneered, "Indeed. That wretch is still hiding in the sea." Letter 1 D411, letter 1 F01, small cap N, letter 22B, letter 1 D668. Li Xunfeng had searched for lightning on several occasions, meticulously investigating each location in hopes of tracking down the elusive Yu. Hearing this, Li Qinghang's spirits lifted. She watched as Li Xunfeng drew his bow and notched an arrow, a spiral of dazzling light rising from the longbow. Go! The arrow vanished from his grasp, and a deafening explosion erupted on a distant island. Li Xunfeng slung the longbow onto his back and stepped onto a golden shuttle, descending swiftly. Everstream Island. This island stretched in a narrow, elongated shape, with numerous rivers crisscrossing its terrain. Houses crowded the land, and monks directed mortals to carry stones and lumber up to the tallest mountain on the island. At the mountain's summit, over a dozen temples had been erected in various sizes. The largest stood in resplendent glory, its corridors interconnected, with clear waters from a lake reflecting blooming lotuses. Within the main temple, the atmosphere was grim and shadowed. Hundreds of carved stone statues, each with a unique and sinister form, lined the walls. In the center stood a jade altar, beneath which a bubbling pool of blood churned violently. Atop the altar rested half a corpse. Its cracked skin continuously split open and reknit itself, absorbing the blood below in a grotesque display. Yu sat cross-legged atop the high jade altar, motionless as he cultivated. Beneath him lay a blood pool spanning several zhang, its surface bubbling and churning. Streams of multicolored light rose from the pool, transforming midair into vivid illusions. Some illusions depicted beautiful women and fine wine, while others showed ornate pavilions and majestic mansions. These phantasms swirled and danced around Yu, as if paying homage. On either side of the altar, rows of monks dressed in black robes stood in a neat formation, bowing respectfully as they waited. Yu let out a breath, his tone laced with irritation. This place is truly awful. Far from Jiangnan, sparsely populated, and with so many useless sons of Diang, what a waste. Years ago, in despair, he had fled across the sea and eventually found this refuge. After a period of rampant slaughter to stabilize his cultivation, he had swiftly established temples on the island. Yu's current strength left him incapable of prolonged combat. The so-called son of Diang's flesh and blood were bland and unsatisfying, so he proclaimed that son of Diang embodied the true Taoist physique, while ordinary mortal flesh was a sinful aberration. This allowed him to rapidly take control of the island and fabricate a sect of Diang monks to provide him with blood offerings. Having roamed the overseas regions for some time, Yu had become well-versed in these tactics. He quickly established a fully functioning system, using mortals as cattle for blood and flesh to sustain himself. However, he found the island's isolation and lack of spiritual energy particularly frustrating. Most of the population were ordinary mortals, and their offerings barely kept him alive. Healing his injuries or escaping to the Western Sea seemed nearly impossible. I will have to take it slow, cultivating a few subordinates to scour the nearby islands for more blood offerings. Yu had recovered from his initial despair. As long as there were people on the island, he held hope of regaining his strength. After all, mortals were easier to maintain than spirit beasts and surprisingly effective a business, with no costs and guaranteed returns. As he mused over his plans, a sudden chill swept over him. A bone-deep coldness made him shudder, and a faint buzzing sound reached his ears, growing louder. Buzz, buzz, how is this possible? Yu froze, his body trembling as the same terrifying hum that haunted his days and nights resurfaced. The monk's body on the jade altar jerked twice, blood streaming from his ears as he murmured, "He is here." The blood in the pool beneath him surged violently, climbing up the jade altar in an attempt to shield him, but it was too late. A deafening explosion rang out as the jade altar was torn apart, shattered into two pieces. Multicolored light burst forth in chaotic streams. Master Monk. The black-robed monks coughed up blood in unison, collapsing to the ground. The countless statues within the temple crumbled simultaneously, falling into piles of fine stone dust. The grand hall itself groaned, as though mourning its destruction, before collapsing with a thunderous crash. At that very moment, across the northern Qinling prefecture, statues shattered in various locations. In the waters of the converging sea and scarlet pristine sea, monks raised their faces in terror, pale with fear. Second senior brother has fallen too. Chapter 585, Sarirap. Li Xunfeng and Li Qinghang descended from the wind. They saw smoke and dust rising from the mountaintop and panicked monks scattering in all directions. Many locals frantically dug through the rubble, their faces filled with terror as though the sky itself were falling. The buildings on the summit of the island's mountain had collapsed. The green roof tiles amidst the ruins had pretty much revealed that a huge temple had been standing in the heart of the destruction. The ground was stained with blood, looking like an eye-catching scarlet sea. As the two people landed on the ground, the monks appeared to realize what had happened. Their cries filled the air as they rushed to the temple hall in the center. Li Qinghang's spiritual sense swept through the scene, then said, "Second uncle, the spiritual energy in this blood is dense this volume. It couldn't be the blood of a cultivator. It must come from some sort of a blood pool, one that's used for sacrificial spells." Li Xuanfeng stepped further into the ruins and noticed lotus flowers on the ground. Golden light shone down upon them, making them seem rather sacred amidst the swirling dark gray dust. The platform in the middle had been split into two. Something white and crystalline, about the size of a grain, floated in midair. It was surrounded by a halo of colorful light that created shifting illusions. The lotus flowers on either side released an intoxicating fragrance, while a group of naked locals fell to their knees, crying and wailing while looking at the two cultivators with intense hatred in their eyes. "You is dead," Li Xuanfeng muttered as he scanned the area. He had already expected this. This man probably failed to heal his injuries during the past few years. After taking an arrow like that, death was inevitable. Neither Li Xuanfeng nor Li Qinghang had seen the relic suspended in the air before, but they had heard rumors about it. Li Qinghang cautiously observed it for a bit longer before saying, "This must be a Sarira pearl. It seems like this monk had more to him than we thought." Li Xuanfeng glanced at the relic indifferently but only said, he was lucky to have lived on for a few more years. The Sarira pearl continued floating in the air quietly. "This is strange. Mutuo's spiritual power was not inferior to his, yet only you had left behind a Sarira pearl after his death. Perhaps this has something to do with that Abbot Qinling or Qinling Dao lineage that they once spoke of." The middle-aged man mused with a puzzled look on his face. Li Qinghang cast another glance at the lotus flowers on the ground. Its mystical glow was strange, and numerous birds flitted down, mesmerized by their beauty. This Zhao Buddhist cultivator's ability to tame mortals is truly impressive. The locals of this entire island willingly fed him with their flesh and blood, and remained utterly loyal to him. They truly revered him from the depths of their hearts, Li Qinghang remarked softly. Her comment naturally referred to the hateful glances of the locals. Li Xuanfeng observed the Sarira pearl and casually replied, "Zhao Buddhist cultivators are like that. Even many cultivators can't resist him, let alone mortals." Li Qinghang's brow furrowed slightly at her uncle's response. She parted her vermilion lips, parted ever so slightly, but her voice erupted like a thunderclap in spring. "Ha!" The monks in the crowd froze before losing their consciousness, stunned by the force of the sound. Li Qinghang casually raised her hand, channeling her mana. The monks immediately formed a neat line, moving toward the temple entrance. Since they had seen the Sarira pearl and its illusions, it would be very easy for them to stray into the wrathful Dao. Li Qinghang used her mana to erase their memories, sparing the Li family from any revenge that might come from a master monk decades later. Meanwhile, Li Xuanfeng raised his hand carefully, taking out a jade bottle. Using his mana, he pulled the grain-sized Sarira pearl from the air, guiding it into the bottle. The moment it entered, the jade bottle gave off a burst of warmth. A faint red glow shimmered through its turquoise body. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, Li Xuanfeng could hear the faint echoes of yelling and muffled incantations, as though the bottle contained the voices of thousands. "How disturbing," Li Xuanfeng muttered, then cast a few spirit pacification spells. They had little effect, so he pulled out several higher-grade talismans and affixed them to the bottle, which made him feel more at ease. As soon as the Sarira pearl was sealed in the bottle, Dharma light and the glowing lotuses in the hall vanished. The temple, now partly collapsed, slowly dimmed too. Li Xuanfeng, using his mana, shot out a burst of mana and retrieved several Dharma artifacts from the ruins. When he first severely injured the monk had lost most of his valuable items. His most prized possession, a pair of long staves, had already been taken by Li Xuanfeng before. What remained were less valuable artifacts, mostly made of gold, jade, and pearls, radiating divine light. These were mainly Dharma artifacts that could manipulate people's hearts and leave spiritual seals, so Li Xuanfeng stored them away. After scouring the island carefully for a few rounds with Li Qinghang, they took off together. With the evil spawn dealt with, Li Xuanfeng's mood lightened significantly, and he felt so much more at least. Perhaps this is some kind of Buddhist legacy. Maybe we could use it to catch a few more Zhao Buddhist cultivators, he remarked. Li Qinghang smiled and nodded, her gaze turning to the mountain filled with temples with monks moving busily between them. She frowned for a moment, then performed a series of hand seals and unleashed several bolts of purple lightning. Boom. The thunder cracked, instantly shattering the temples in their path. Fire and lightning erupted, burning the sacred texts within to ash. Li Qinghong sighed softly. This is the most we can do. After all, this place was once run by Zhao State's master monk. Without any rogue cultivators willing to settle here, it might take centuries for this place to fully recover. We can't afford to care so much. Li Xuanfeng replied, shaking his head as the two of them soared through the sky. They crossed the scarlet pristine sea and followed a few water veins along the way until they finally returned to Spleetered Island. Once there, they dived into the turquoise sea and made their way to the marketplace. Ning Heiyuan did not come to greet them because he was currently cultivating in seclusion. By the time the two arrived at the cave dwelling, Ning family's eldest brother was already waiting by the stone door. Boss, a young cultivator came to the marketplace. He said he's looking for you. A young cultivator? Li Xuanfeng turned to him and curiously asked, what's his cultivation level and name? He's a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator, but he refused to give his name, only saying that he's a junior from the Converging Sea. It must be Zhang Kaiyan. It's been several years and he's already broken through to the Foundation Establishment Realm too. I wonder why he's come to find me now. Hopefully, it's about Green Pine Temple, Li Xuanfeng thought to himself. He took a seat in the center of the cave dwelling, then waved his hand and instructed, bring him here. Ning Dingbo nodded and quickly left, while Li Xuanfeng turned to Li Qinghong and said, you should leave first. This person carries a strong heavenly destiny. It's better for you to not meet him to save yourself from troubles. Li Qinghong understood Li Xuanfeng's words and bowed before withdrawing. Li Xuanfeng then took a jade slip, reading its contents in silence. Not long after, a young man dressed in a dark robe and with his hair tied back appeared at the cave dwelling's entrance. He paused respectfully before entering and said, Junior Zhang Kaiyan pays respects to the Taoist. Come in, Li Xuanfeng replied. He had heard of what fated ones were capable of, and now that Zhang Kaiyan had reached the Foundation Establishment Realm, his respectful demeanor impressed Li Xuanfeng. At least he was well-mannered on the surface. Li Xuanfeng couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Seems like there's a big difference between the fated ones. Zhang Kaiyan is very different from those I've heard of in rumors. His mind continued to wander. If the true monarch hadn't returned to the mountain so hastily, but had instead taken things one step at a time, I wonder what role Zhang Kaiyan might have played by his side. Crow's thoughts. Hey everyone, this is a message from all the readers currently working on the Mirror Legacy wiki page. One of our fellow TML readers, Glimp, has started a wiki page for the novel, and we're working together to expand it. Open book, check it out here. As of now, a lot of the other readers on Discord are joining in and contributing. Due to the complex dynamics of this novel, we need more contributors to make this a full-fledged wiki. If you're interested in helping out, join our Discord and check out the thread from the Mirror Legacy channel. Let's build this together. Chapter 586, Two Spirit Treasures I. It's been only a few years since we last met, yet you've already broken through to Foundation Establishment Realm. That's pretty fast. Zhang Kaiyan raised his head slightly and glanced at the cold man in golden armor before replying, thanks to your guidance, Senior, I seized the opportunity to establish my Dao Foundation in Converging Sea. Afterward, I inquired about your whereabouts and traveled all the way here. His implication was clear. Breaking through to Foundation Establishment Realm hadn't taken him the 3 or 4 years one might expect. In fact, he had likely succeeded in just 1 or 2 years, leaving him ample time to journey here at his own pace. Li Xuanfeng, recognizing that Zhang Kaiyan's cultivation speed was exceptional, nodded slightly and motioned for him to continue. Zhang Kaiyan paused for a moment, then spoke softly, Senior's kindness has been engraved in my heart, but I'm still unable to repay it yet. There's nothing of value in my hands, except for the news of a cave dwelling, which I wish to offer to you, Senior. He must be referring to the Green Pine Temple. Li Xuanfeng listened attentively. Knowing that Zhang Kaiyan bore a threat of fate, Li Xuanfeng didn't believe the young man for even a second when he claimed he had no valuable treasures on him. Since he's offering information about this cave dwelling, I can't simply abandon him and explore it alone. He's quite a shrewd one. Had Li Xuanfeng not known about Zhang Kaiyan bearing a threat of fate, he might have felt grateful for the offer, perhaps even sending Li Qinghong or Li Yuanjiao along with him to explore it. Zhang Kaiyan would have killed 2 birds with 1 stone, not just repaying a favor to Li Xuanfeng, but also earning a companion to explore the cave with him. But now, with his deeper knowledge, Li Xuanfeng merely asked, which cave dwelling are you talking about? The Green Pine Temple ruins. On Green Pine Island, Zhang Kaiyan answered, stressing the words as if fearing Li Xuanfeng wouldn't grasp the significance of the site. Green Pine Temple is an ancient immortal gate, and the site is now a grotto heaven. Junior has a way to enter it, but will need a few people's help. Green Pine Temple. Li Xuanfeng raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. That's a grotto heaven we're talking about. Several immortal sects have fought over it for years. As far as I know, the Sword Gate is constantly at odds with Chunyi Dao Gate and Crimson Reef Island because of it. Yet you're telling me you know a way to enter it. Are you sure it will work? He asked. Zhang Kaiyan froze, seemingly realizing only then how famous the Green Pine Temple was. Well, I acquired the method from a devil cultivator. It's written in great detail, and I've studied it carefully for quite some time now. There should be no problem. There are also specific requirements for those setting up the formation. They need to be cultivators who have mastered grade 4 or 5 cultivation techniques that are mystical enough. He answered meekly, I'm just a rogue cultivator born in the Eastern Sea, but I'm fortunate to know 2 friends from Immortal Gates who can join us. One of them is from the Purple Smoke Gate, while the other is from Great Ziyuqi Temple, he added. After hearing the general gist of Zhang Kaiyan's explanation, Li Xuanfeng coldly laughed to himself. Those Taoist masters had really arranged everything carefully. They must have really feared that the opportunity inside those ruins might be snatched away by others, going to such lengths as to set up multiple requirements. I'm guessing that all of them are just cover-ups to make it easier for those bearing a threat of fate to enter that place. Despite his inner thoughts, Li Xuanfeng nodded and politely replied, Well, you've come at a great time. I happen to be seeking a few cultivation techniques within Grotto Heavens. Thank you for your help. No thanks needed. We are the fortunate ones to have you joining us, Zhang Kaiyan responded eagerly, his joy evident. Having someone as formidable as Li Xuanfeng joining his group immediately put Zhang Kaiyan at ease. He quickly added, I've heard that this method is known to others as well, so there will be competition within the Grotto Heaven. I'll be relying on your help when the time comes, Senior. Letter 1D667 Cyrillicea Buddha, this piece of information was likely passed on to Zhang Kaiyan by those in the Immortal Sect, so he was reminding Li Xuanfeng to be fully prepared. Li Xuanfeng nodded slightly in acknowledgement, and then the young man continued, I will come to find Senior in 3 months. By then the other 2 from the Immortal Gates will also be joining us. Please use this time to prepare yourself, Senior. After a few more polite exchanges, Zhang Kaiyan made his exit. Li Yuanjiao entered the cave dwelling right after him, and Li Xuanfeng said, there are still 3 months left. We can retrieve the Dharma artifact and test it out. Li Yuanjiao nodded, though with some hesitation, and spoke softly, the Grotto Heaven is dangerous. We might not be able to return. Finding the entrance would be ideal, but I'm afraid it won't be possible for us to bring the mirror inside. If something were to happen to it inside, it could lead to trouble. Li Xuanfeng nodded and replied, You're right, we'll just bring it out to give it a try, but finding that entrance is our best bet. Li Yuanjiao took to the wind and left, while Li Xuanfeng fell into a deep, thoughtful silence. Taoist Master Yuan Su, is he really giving me an opportunity? Can we really kill Yu Muxian? He recalled Taoist Master Yuan Su's words that day. They seemed to suggest that there would be no consequences for killing Yu Muxian, but the real meaning behind those words was unclear. Was it a hint or a warning? Li Xuanfeng tightened his grip on the golden bow. Yu Muxian had been hiding himself on the peak day after day, cultivating in seclusion, never making a move. It had become increasingly difficult for Li Xuanfeng to gauge the man's strength. He closed his eyes slowly, sinking his thoughts into the golden bow. Within it, a sea of golden light and astral light glowed brightly thick, sharp and brimming with immeasurable power. This arrow intent, I'm afraid I'll have to use it soon, he murmured. Li Xuanfeng had sealed an arrow intent within his golden bow. Over the decades, it had been honed and refined, day after day, until its power surpassed even his own comprehension. When he was young, he had told Li Tongya about this not long after this Dharma artifact was forged. No one else knew about it. With Li Tongya's death, this secret remained buried. Now he was the only one who knew about it. He exhaled softly and quietly resumed his cultivation. Yunwu Peak, Mount Azure Pond. Yunwu Peak towered above the clouds, shrouded by mist and blessed with surging fiery veins. It was the Azure Pond's dedicated immortal peak for weapon refinement, where cultivators could be seen coming and going all the time. A white jade pavilion stood at its summit, shrouded in mist as well. Spiritual energy was thick in the air, and the sound of flowing spring water could be heard. A middle-aged man sat cross-legged on the jade platform, meditating in silence and radiating an ethereal His long hair cascaded freely over his shoulders, and he wore a jade buckle as his pendant around his neck. As he performed hand seals with his 2 fingers, sounds of clashing metals could be heard. It was as though there were gold and iron within his body, colliding against each other incessantly. As the clouds drifted away, a teenage girl dressed in white approached him, her movements graceful and serene. She kneeled and bowed respectfully to the man and gently informed, "Master, the Taoist master is calling for you." The man slowly opened his eyes, mana light glowing at the center of his brow. "Qingyi, did he tell you the agenda?" he asked. No, the woman Fei Qingyi was a member of the Fei family, now in the late-stage qi cultivation. Since she was a disciple of Yuanwu Peak, her attire was of high quality. She hesitated before continuing. "I wasn't informed of the agenda, but based on the recent rumors, it may be related to the Green Pine Temple." The man was none other than Yu Muxian. Having secluded himself for many years, his cultivation had grown ever more profound. He exhaled lightly, rose gracefully to his feet, and rode the wind, making his way up the mountain. As he passed other cultivators, they cupped their fists in respect and called out, "Greetings, Taoist." Chapter 587, Two Spirit Treasures II. On Yuanwu Peak, aside from the Taoist master Yuanwu himself, Yu Muxian was currently the highest-ranking figure. He merely nodded in acknowledgement to the greetings as he continued his ascent, passing through the mountain to the cave dwelling at its peak, where he waited silently outside the stone door. After a few moments, the door creaked open, and Yu Muxian stepped inside. The cave was ablaze with golden light, dazzling and blinding him. Heat was surging from the ground. Yu Muxian lowered his head in reverence and spoke softly, "Greetings, master." The figure before him, obscured by a shimmering golden aura, spoke in a deep, resounding voice. "Muxian, not bad. You are already at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm." Taoist Yuanwu sounded extremely pleased, and after a brief pause, he softened his tone. "I see you have refined both your spells, techniques, and cultivation. I've summoned you today to send you on a trip to the Eastern Sea." Yu Muxian disliked these mundane matters the most. He longed only to seclude himself on the peak until he reached the Purple Mansion realm. However, since Taoist Master Yuanwu had a personal request, he had no grounds to refuse. With a respectful voice he replied, "Please tell me more about it, Master." Taoist Master Yuanwu seemed to have anticipated his thoughts. His voice echoed through the cave, vast and resonant. "I know you are focused on your cultivation, but this matter concerns your future Tao path. There are also several items I wish to obtain, and you are the only one under my command capable of handling this task." Yu Muxian, who believed his cultivation technique could reach all the way to the Purple Mansion realm without an issue, wasn't entirely convinced that this mission had anything to do with his Tao path. He considered it more likely to be an excuse from his master to send him on this journey. "Go to Green Pine Temple. Tang Shedu is already waiting for you in the Eastern Sea. He has also reached the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm and has made friends with a fate bearer. You will follow him into the Grotto Heaven." Yu Muxian nodded, responding with a question. "What is the background of this Grotto Heaven? What is it that you seek from there, Master?" Taoist Master Yuanwu chuckled softly, causing the golden light in the cave to flicker slightly. Green Pine Grotto Heaven belongs to an ancient Tao lineage known as Green Pine Temple. Through the ebb and flow of time, Green Pine Immortal Temple has risen and fallen 3 times since the primordial era. Now the Grotto Heaven stands as the legacy of the last Green Pine Tao lineage, he explained. Yu Muxian's understanding began to take shape, and he responded quietly, "The Chunyi Tao." "Correct. The Chunyi Tao claims itself to be the descendant of the Green Pine Temple Tao lineage. If you encounter them within the Grotto Heaven, be extremely cautious," Yuanwu replied. The golden light in the cave shifted as Yuanwu repeated, "I want you to retrieve 3 items from the Grotto Heaven. If the opportunities present themselves, be sure to bring them back. I will reward you accordingly." Letter 1E59 A tilde small capen, a letter 1D401 yes acute he began. "The first item is the Sunseeker ring. Your senior brother obtained this ring from the sea, but he never had the chance to study it in detail before he was killed by Gu from Crimson Reef Island. Gu probably could not recognize the ring, and it disappeared on Green Pine Island, where he died. The relic is now somewhere within the Grotto Heaven." Yuanwu then conjured an image in his hand, a small golden red ring. Yu Muxian memorized its appearance as Yuanwu continued explaining. "The second item is the Unspeaking Bell, a powerful spirit treasure. It would be great if you could obtain it, but don't worry if you can't." Another image appeared in Yuanwu's hand, an ancient, majestic-looking stone bell, with 2 strange talisman runes carved into it. He allowed Yu Muxian a moment to memorize its appearance before continuing. As for the last item, if you and the others manage to enter the Three Drums Hall within the Grotto Heaven and find legacy techniques, record one of them for me. It is the one that goes with the Grave Gate Thorn Immortal Foundation. Upon hearing that, Yu Muxian's interest was finally piqued as he hurriedly asked, Master, regarding the legacy techniques, do we get to pick? Yes, Taoist Master Yuanwu replied, as if he had anticipated Yu Muxian's question. The Tao partner cultivation techniques to your molten metal cave are among them. I heard that 3 out of 5 are ancient techniques. Whether the specific qi required can still be gathered or not will depend on your luck. A sincere joy finally appeared on Yu Muxian's face. The Azure Pawn sect did not possess the Tao partner of his molten metal cave, so he never would have expected he could find one within this heaven grotto. His excitement surged as he nodded and said, Thank you, Master. Master Yuanwu nodded gently, pausing for a moment before adding, This grotto heaven is very dangerous, and you will need spirit treasures to protect yourself on this journey. With a wave of his hand, 2 spirit treasures flew out from his sleeve. One was a golden ring, no thicker than a pinky finger but large enough to fit a head. It was engraved with many runes. The second was an ordinary-looking short sword, with 2 lines of patterns engraved into the handle. It floated gently in the air, appearing unremarkable. Binding Ring and Cloudsunder, Yuanwu said. Yu Muxian, who had been by Yuanwu's side for years, instantly recognized the treasures. Both were Purple Mansion Realm spirit treasures, extremely rare and valuable. Taoist Master Yuanwu had crafted them only several years ago, so they had not been properly nurtured or refined by metallic essence. As a result, they were far less potent than those treasures that had been carefully nurtured for many years by other Purple Mansion Realm Taoist masters. Nevertheless, they were still precious Purple Mansion Realm spirit treasures. Yu Muxian instantly kneeled, putting on a hesitant look on his face as he said, Master, I cannot accept such precious spirit treasures. I couldn't possibly bear the responsibility of losing them out there. Yuanwu laughed, Haha, who would dare take them? The only ones in that grotto heaven are Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. They won't be able to defeat you. Besides, which Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator in their right mind would dare take these treasures? Once you're out of the grotto heaven, they will return to me through the great void. You don't have to worry about anything, he assured. Yu Muxian nodded and replied softly, I understand. The light around Taoist Yuanwu's body glowed slightly brighter as he continued, Ning Tia Xiao has sent someone named Li Xuanfeng over. I heard that he's a member of the Li family from Moongaze Lake. You should befriend him since you're from the same sect. There are many benefits to joining forces. Yu Muxian nodded and quietly exited the cave dwelling. As he walked, his thoughts wandered. Li Xuanfeng has become the son-in-law of the Ning family, Well, that small grudge between our clans is nothing. I don't mind talking with him. As for these, I'm probably the only one among the sects who get to carry 2 Purple Mansion Realm spirit treasures like this. I have to say, this mission is a good opportunity. I'll try to find a few more treasures and cultivation techniques to bring home. Meanwhile, Taoist Master Yuanwu remained in his seat within the cave dwelling. The light radiating from his body continued to intensify. The cave dwelling was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Green Pine Temple can bridge the gap of Tao lineages, Things are really getting lively. We may even see people from the north. The true monarchs are likely keeping an eye on this, hoping to find the real heir of the immortal temple. He mumbled. The items among the Green Pine Temple ruins were attractive to the Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. To the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, they merely supplemented a few Tao lineages. As for the true monarchs, they were only interested in those who could truly receive the legacy of the grotto heaven. Yuansu, Yuanxiu, Zaipai, Tiandong. When the winds of change swept through, a dozen or so rode the tide, but now only a few of them remain. Their lifespan is dwindling, so they must be getting anxious, he murmured. He gazed in the direction Yu Muxian had gone, his golden pupils shifting slightly. Whether it's too late or not, we'll have to try. Chapter 588, 5 Monarchs Observing a Dice Cup Eye. Li Yuanjiao rode the wind all the way back to Mount Qingdu. Li Zijian was currently cultivating in seclusion, and it was his daughter Li Yuexiang who came to greet him. Li Yuexiang had grown a lot taller now, dressed in white. She wore a simple hairpin adorned with a tiny white jade osmanthus flower, no bigger than a fingernail. Just like Xiao Giluan, she also had a pair of phoenix eyes that embodied the soft beauty of Jiangnan's water villages. She cupped her fist and said, Yuexiang greets father. Li Yuanjiao closed his eyes for a moment before saying softly, Xianger is a qi cultivator now. Li Yuexiang had already reached the qi cultivation realm, practicing the Pheasant Flame's long march technique. Li Yunjiao barely registered that the little girl in his memory had already turned into a young lady. Looking at her now, he realized that he had missed her entire childhood. Li Yuexiang smiled and nodded to his words. Li Yunjiao fell silent for a moment before announcing softly, "I've returned only to see you and your mother. I plan to enter the Green Pine Temple ruins, and I fear I might not come out from it alive." Li Yuexiang paused. She looked at the silent, middle-aged man in black and replied, "Father, you've been working hard." Li Yunjiao continued walking with her, with hands behind him. He hesitated for a moment before awkwardly asking, "Do you have any preferred Dharma artifact?" "No," Li Yuexiang answered casually, and her father awkwardly searched for another topic to talk about. It wasn't too long before they found Xiao Giluan. Xiao Giluan had remained at the 9th layer of the qi cultivation realm for some time. Though Li Yunjiao oversaw the Li family, he had been unable to spare an essence gathering pill for her. Xiao Giluan understood that her husband preferred she not involve herself too deeply in the family's affairs, so she quietly continued her cultivation in the mountains. Over the years, Xiao Giluan studied the art of talisman drawing to fill her time. When she learned of her husband's unexpected return, she was very happy. After a few intimate exchanges with him, Li Yunjiao brought up the topic of Green Pine Temple ruins. Xiao Giluan listened quietly, waiting for her husband to finish speaking before asking, "Must you go?" Li Yunjiao fell silent for a long while before replying, "If we wait until that man breaks through to the Purple Mansion realm, our family will meet a tragic end. I must kill him. I fear that second uncle's strength alone will only be enough to defeat but not kill him. I must pick up my sword and go there to cut him down with my sword intent." Li Yunjiao used the feud between the two clans as an excuse, but in reality, Yu Muxian's jade buckle was the more pressing reason. Xiao Giluan's expression grew solemn as she gave Li Yuexiang a nod, gesturing for her to leave, then said softly, "I understand you have your reasons for going. I can only hope you will take care of yourself." Li Yunjiao nodded, then took out a small letter from his sleeve and quietly said, "If I don't return, send this to Zijai in Azure Pond sect." Xiao Giluan accepted the letter silently. Li Yunjiao studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering on her phoenix eyes. Finally, he smiled and assured, "Don't worry too much. Perhaps Yu Muxian isn't as skilled in battle as you think." 3 months passed in the blink of an eye, and there was no time to waste. Li Yunjiao took the immortal mirror from its platform and rode the. Li Yuexiang was waiting at the top of the mountain. Li Yunjiao stopped, watching her for a moment. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Take care, father." Li Yunjiao gave her a slight nod and a brief smile before leaving on the wind. Instead of heading north, he flew east toward Mount Xianyu first. The Xiao family's Mount Xianyu was a well-known mountain, though Li Yunjiao rarely visited. His arrival was swiftly announced, and a man with a dignified, commanding presence, dressed in a brocade robe, came out to greet him. "Ah, so my brother-in-law has come." It was Xiao Gitu who had come out to receive him. It had been decades since Li Yunjiao last saw him. Noticing that the man's aura was now fuller, indicating that he had reached the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, Li Yunjiao replied, "Congratulations, family head. Your cultivation has progressed very swiftly." Letter 211D A ring nu o bar letter 1D51F e circumflex letter 1D4AE. Xiao Gitu waved his hand modestly and responded, "There's still a long way ahead of me. It's too early to say that." Li Yunjiao offered a few more polite words but didn't linger on the subject. He then asked, regarding the Green Pine Temple, "Does your esteemed clan have any involvement in it?" Xiao Gitu paused for a moment before answering, "Our ancestor, Xiao Yongling the man on Mount Feather, has already made his way there and will be entering the ruins. As for collecting spiritual qi outside the grotto heaven, my family lacks the manpower, so we're not involved in that." As the Green Pine Temple drew closer to this world, it inevitably gave rise to many spiritual qi and spirit treasures. Many had already made their way there to begin gathering whatever they could, especially the former. Li Yunjiao cupped his fist and told Xiao Gitu about Li Xuanfeng's plan of entering the grotto heaven. Xiao Gitu nodded thoughtfully, then said, "The two elders share a strong friendship. I am sure they know their limits in everything they do." Li Yunjiao briefly discussed the matter with Xiao Gitu, exchanged a few pleasantries, and then took his leave. Xiao Gitu saw him off, then mumbled to himself as he turned back, "I guess Yu Muxian will be killed. Although the relationship between the older generations is good, that's not a good reason for our family to take the risk." Li Yunjiao exited Mount Xianyu and headed north. He had never expected the Xiao family to intervene in this matter after all. It involved offending at least one Taoist master. If things went awry, they would offend another future Taoist master. Of course, the Xiao family would refrain from getting involved. He had only traveled there to inform them of this matter as a show of respect. We can only rely on ourselves for this matter, he mumbled. Li Yuanjiao his journey, flying swiftly toward Lake Xi'an, then following the water veins eastward. Soon he passed over the shallow sea and descended into it, heading to the marketplace of Spleetard Island. The marketplace had become increasingly crowded with cultivators. Many Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, who usually remained hidden from view, were also here to gather information. The contest over the Green Pine Temple ruins had been ongoing for years, and rumors were now spreading that the Green Pine Grotto Heaven was about to manifest in this world. Like sharks sensing blood, many cultivators in the region became more active. Whether or not they could enter the Grotto Heaven, the manifestation of a Grotto Heaven was still a huge incident. All sorts of unusual phenomena were already happening on the Green Pine Island. Many special types of spiritual qi that had long been extinct had reappeared, along with spirit water and spirit fire. It was like the time when the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven descended into the world. Green Pine Grotto Heaven was only beginning to manifest, so it wasn't like Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven's full descent, where countless items had fallen to the world. However, Green Pine Grotto Heaven was far grander and older than the latter. The spirit items that would be born from it were enough to spark fierce competition among cultivators eager to claim them. As soon as Li Yuanjiao arrived, he had a discussion with Li Qinghang for a while. Seeing that there were still a few days left before he would have to leave again, he decided to browse through the marketplace. It was there that he unexpectedly ran into an old acquaintance. It was an unassuming middle-aged man, dressed in simple clothing. Behind him stood a tall, powerfully built man with piercing eyes. He spotted Li Yuanjiao right away and quickly approached. Han Shizhen of the Han family from Dongliu greets fellow Taoist. It was the young master of the Han family on Dongliu Island. He had visited the Li family before to purchase Wanglin Blossom. Li Yuanjiao had made several trips to Dongliu Island to investigate if this man had marked up the price of the blossoms to benefit his own interests. Chapter 589, 5 Monarchs Observing a Dice Cup, II. Of course, Li Yuanjiao learned that Han Shizhen had been conducting business honestly over the years. The two greeted each other warmly. Han Shizhen glanced at Li Qinghang, who stood nearby, and nodded to her with a smile. "This must be your younger sister," he asked. After complimenting Li Qinghang a few times as a courtesy, he got straight to the point. "Did you hear about the Green Pine Grotto Heaven, fellow Taoist?" he asked. "Of course," Li Yuanjiao replied. Han Shizhen's smile instantly grew wider as he continued in a low voice. "I've united several families on Dongliu Island. We plan to meet about 10 li away from Green Pine Island to gather spiritual qi. We'll join forces to fend off any enemies and share the collected spiritual qi at the end. I'm wondering if your esteemed clan would be interested in joining us." Regarding the matter outside of Green Pine Temple, Li Yuanjiao had already decided to leave it to Li Qinghang. He hoped they could secure a few treasures, but if not, it wasn't a problem. Initially, he had considered teaming up with the Xiao family. However, they had not sent anyone, perhaps because they were reluctant to get involved in anything that might stir trouble. Li Yuanjiao immediately discussed the plan with Han Shizhen. Since Li Qinghang's strength had grown significantly, teaming up with the Han family was a wonderful arrangement. After setting the date, Han Shizhen bid them farewell. Li Yuanjiao then whispered to his younger sister, "Don't cause a scene out there. Leave after you get 1 or 2 spirit items. We don't know what will happen there, so it'll be safer for you to return to the clan first to avoid any trouble." Li Qinghang nodded silently. Li Yuanjiao didn't say much more, then called upon the wind once again to find Li Xuanfeng. Since it was about time for them to leave, the two began their journey to Green Pine Island. Green Pine Island was situated near Crimson Reef Island. Thankfully, the ever-flowing jade cloudliner was still in Li Xuanfeng's possession. He threw it into the air, and it immediately grew in size, giving off a turquoise light as it transformed into a large ship over 10 zhang long. Zhang Kaiyan, Li Xuanfeng, and Li Yuanjiao boarded the cloudliner. Before long, they arrived at Green Pine Island. Since this island was close to Crimson Reef Island, Zhang Kaiyan's 2 friends waited for him there. The first was a beautiful woman in a purple robe, at the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm. A purple mist surrounded her, and she carried a purple jade long sword on her back. She smiled at Zhang Kaiyan and then cupped her fist to Li Xuanfeng. "Can Ziyu from Purple Smoke Gate. "Greetings, fellow Taoist," she said. The second person was a man dressed in a black robe, with many jades and animal bones as accessories. His eyebrows were short and light, but his gaze was sharp and fierce. He was polite as he addressed Li Xuanfeng, Great Ziyuqi Temple, Lin Chensheng. Zhang Qian chuckled and introduced them to each other. I befriended these two seniors during my travels. This is Senior Li Xuanfeng. You two must have heard of him. He's a Qi cultivator, yet he's already friends with 3 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators from Immortal Gates. This is truly outrageous. Li Xuanfeng proceeded to store the jade ship away, then greeted them. Can Ziyu smiled and said softly, "We can only activate the formation to enter when the grotto heaven is closest to the world. There are still 10 days before that happens. I have already set up a cave dwelling on this island. Why don't we go there first so we can discuss the details?" Li Xuanfeng nodded, then transmitted his voice to Li Yuanjiao. "Go ahead and check out the situation first. You can come find me afterward." It remained uncertain whether the immortal mirror could be brought inside the grotto heaven. If not, Li Xuanfeng would have to rely on his sword in there. Our acute letter 1F00 small cap pen letter 1ED5 letter 1D401 E hatchek letter 1E69. Li Yuanjiao nodded silently and watched as the others departed. Li Qingheng went off to find the Han family, while Li Yuanjiao rode the wind alone toward the island. The sky was filled with flying cultivators, some occasionally stopping to observe the situation. Obviously, news of the Green Pine Temple had spread, and more rogue cultivators and those from various clans had arrived to investigate. Green Pine Immortal Island was moderate in size. Its mountains were not too high, and the island was peppered with pine trees. On its summit, figures were already rising and falling, some even competing for prime positions. As Green Pine Grotto heaven drew closer to the world, the spiritual energy on the island grew denser. Spirit plants bloomed and bore fruit inexplicably, ore veins rose from the ground, and fire veins surged powerfully. Li Yuanjiao narrowed his eyes and extended his spiritual sense, carefully sweeping across the sky in front of him. Before him, the wind and waves were calm. The sea was a deep dark green and the sky was azure blue. An island loomed large in the middle of the ocean, covered with green pines. Everything seemed so peaceful and serene. He paused among a group of cultivators, looking around twice for anything unusual, but found nothing. The island appeared ordinary. His observations, both with the immortal mirror and the naked eye, revealed nothing out of the ordinary. This caused Li Yuanjiao to frown in surprise. It seems like the mirror doesn't work. This is a problem. While Li Yuanjiao was surveying the island, Lu Jiangxian focused his divine sense and remained motionless. Lu Jiangxian's gaze shifted toward the island. What had been a calm scene now appeared completely transformed before his eyes. The once empty sky was now filled with a dense cluster of figures and swirling mana lights, splitting it into 5 distinct sections. A towering figure sat cross-legged in each section, their forms massive enough to cover the sky. Behind them, a halo of colorful light radiated, and golden runes fell like raindrops from their bodies. A swarm of figures clung to them like ants, each wearing a unique expression. 10 massive spheres, each the size of the sun, hung suspended in the sky. They were white on the outside with black centers, unmistakably the eyes, some with vertical pupils, others square or hexagram. All were fixed on the small island below, gazing directly at it. Eyes. The suns he had just seen were the eyes of these 5 figures, whose faces were obscured by endless clouds. Yet those eyes seemed to burn into his heart. They were both distant in the sky and unsettlingly close at the same time. These figures were so immense that their heads seemed to press against the highest shroud of the heavens. They had to lean forward, drawing their heads close together, as if they were children peering down at ants on the ground. They sat on the ocean floor, their bodies hidden beneath the deep waters. Some appeared lost in thought, others clasped their hands together, or rested their faces on their palms, blocking the sky with their sheer presence. The 5 figures sat around the Green Pine Temple, which stood at the center like a dice cup. Each of them seemed to hold their own silent guess, waiting patiently for the revelation. Above the island, an arc began to form, accompanied by natural phenomena. Clearly, this must be the Grotto Heaven, a delectable dessert on display before the 5 true monarchs. Lu Jiangxian stared, frozen in place, too afraid to look away. 4 giants loomed before him, with countless human figures perched on their shoulders, knees, and even fingertips, each holding Dharma artifacts in various poses. They remained motionless, like statues, all staring at him. The 5th giant sat behind Li Yuanjiao, one hand raised in front of his golden white lips, while the other rested flat in front of his chest, palm open, like a great island. Both of them had already fallen into his hand. His palm prints were like deep grooves, and his golden white skin shone as if it were some extraordinary treasure. His clothes shimmered like a golden white cloud. At the same time, they also seemed like a waterfall cascading upward into the endless clouds above. Lu Jiangxian stared, catching a vague glimpse of a face, its features not fully visible. The true monarch wore a jade crown resembling a mountain, and his silver-white oval pupils swirled with illusion's fire, refining real gold, gold and metal striking each other, sand and stone rising into the air. Each vision appeared one after the other. What nearly caused Lu Jiangxian to stop breathing was the true monarch's cold, unblinking gaze, fixed squarely on Li Yuanjiao in his palm. From the great void, an ice-cold voice emerged, crashing down into the world inside the mirror like a handful of gold, iron, and gravel. "Senior Yings, I've been waiting for you." Chapter 590, Taiyuan. At almost the exact same moment, four figures nearby turned their gazes toward Li Yuanjiao, their eyes cold and piercing. Various lights swirled within their pupils, deflecting all illusions outside the boundary of the mirror. Lu Jiangxian's heart felt as if it had been struck by an avalanche, his mind reeling with terror. Green Pine Temple. They orchestrated this trap. It was all to lure me here. Lu Jiangxian held his breath and steadied himself, his mind going blank. He remained utterly silent, but fortunately, he did not project the scene to Li Yuanjiao, who remained completely unaware. Li Yuanjiao continued to fly freely within the palm of the entity, navigating the wind without suspicion. As the initial shock subsided, Lu Jiangxian calmed himself and thought swiftly, "No, this isn't about me. They're here for the heir of Green Pine Temple, and for Yings. I've only stumbled into their plan by accident. I almost exposed myself." He kept his eyes shut for over 10 breaths, straining to suppress his thoughts. A moment later, a voice, neutral and metallic, like molten gold mingling with lead and mercury, broke the silence. "Taiyuan, what is going on?" The jade crown above Taiyuan True Monarch's head began to glow faintly, and the silver-white pupils of his eyes shifted slightly. His ethereal voice replied, "It is nothing. I saw him peering over from a distance and decided to test him. As it turns out, he is a descendant of Li Qianyuan of Bright Yang. It is only natural he would sense something." Though Taiyuan True Monarch's tone was calm, Lu Jiangxian felt a platinum-white force streak into Li Yuanjiao's mind like a bolt of lightning, ruthlessly scouring through his memories. Li Yuanjiao remained completely unaware, the talisman seed in his sea of qi flickering faintly as he glided farther away on the wind. Lu Jiangxian, his initial panic somewhat subsiding, looked more closely and saw a golden figure slowly manifesting upon Taiyuan's shoulder. The figure bore an identical appearance to Li Yuanjiao, though its eyes glowed golden white and suspicion was etched across its face. The figure gripped a long sword tightly, poised as if ready to strike, yet stood frozen like a sculpture. "Taiyuan." A muffled voice came from the north. Suddenly, white mist surged from Taiyuan's shoulder, dispersing the golden figure into dust and smoke. "Li Qianyuan treated you well," the voice intoned. Taiyuan True Monarch's silver-white pupils moved again, and the sound of clashing metal seemed to reverberate faintly between heaven and earth. He spoke slowly. "If not for Bright Yang's kindness to me, there would be no Li family in Moongay's marsh." As Li Yuanjiao flew away into the distance, Lu Jiangxian felt a chilling emptiness settle over him. The voices of the 5 true monarchs faded from his hearing, leaving only the sight of their towering figures, which seemed to pierce the heavens and earth. Like gazing upon ants, they watched the busy cultivators scurrying on the island below. Fortunately, I didn't let Li Yuanjiao see this scene. If he had, the 5 would surely have noticed immediately, and who knows what Li Yuanjiao would become after a glimpse of the Golden Core Realm cultivators. Lu Jiangxian heaved a sigh of relief. Had Li Yuanjiao been aware of this situation, he would likely have lost his sanity on the spot, exposing himself to the true monarchs. Concealment would have been impossible. What made Lu Jiangxian even more cautious was the realization that the Green Pine Temple, in the eyes of Golden Core Realm true monarchs, was nothing more than bait. Its sole purpose was to lure out the cultivator known as Yings, someone with countless ties to the temple. 5 true monarchs had stationed themselves there, patiently waiting for Yings to fall into their trap. If that's the case, the area around Green Pine Temple is already a perfect snare. It's impossible to enter freely anymore. Lu Jiangxian could almost foresee the consequences. The grotto heaven of Green Pine Temple surrounded by 5 true monarchs, their gazes fixed on it. If Li Yuanjiao revealed his presence, the true monarchs would immediately break into the grotto heaven, and the Li family at Moongay's Lake would face utter annihilation. The image of the 5 towering figures with their glowing pupils lingered vividly in his mind. Although Lu Jiangxian believed he could find an entrance, the overwhelming pressure made him hesitant. How can I, under the eyes of these 5 true monarchs, let Li Yuanjiao stroll into the grotto heaven as if it were his own home? That would be suicidal. The components he had obtained from Yu Muxian represented his only chance, and Lu Jiangxian was unwilling to let it go. As he scanned the island, his gaze slowly focused on a youth wielding a golden hammer. Li Yuanjiao was equally troubled. The immortal mirror had failed to pierce the veil of the grotto heaven, signifying that his plan to enter had failed. The task would fall solely to Li Xuanfeng. However, whether Li Xuanfeng alone could kill Yu Muxian was uncertain. Lacking swordsmanship skills, Li Xuanfeng would struggle to unleash the full sword intent of the Qingque sword. Furthermore, he needed to keep his bow drawn at all times for suppression, making it nearly impossible to focus fully on an attack. As he flew in frustration, repeatedly searching with the immortal mirror, he suddenly froze. His eyes caught sight of a familiar figure. Tu Longjian, he is here. The youth no longer bore the ragged appearance he once had. Dressed in luxurious feathered robes, wielding a golden hammer, and standing atop a dark flying shuttle, he now exuded an air of wealth that outshone Li Yuanjiao, a head of a family clan. Though his attire had changed significantly, his face was unmistakable still, carrying traces of youthful naivety. Memories of the time when an unnamed rogue cultivator defeated a devil cultivator flooded back to Li Yuanjiao. Comparing it to the descriptions from back then, he felt sure this was the same person. I spared his life back then. I wonder if these so-called fated ones honor their promises. Li Yuanjiao deliberated briefly before gritting his teeth. At this point, I have no choice but to try. I have always avoided becoming entangled with these people, but there is no other option now. Though he intended to call in his favor, Li Yuanjiao approached the matter methodically. Instead of flying directly over, he took out the profound pattern bottle from his sleeve. Years ago, he had used this artifact to conceal his presence and identity before Tu Longjian. Pouring out the bottle's contents, he summoned the profound patterned spirit mist, enveloping himself completely. Feigning nonchalance, he drifted on the wind toward the island, wandering aimlessly while subtly closing the distance to Tu Longjian. Along the way, he encountered a few groups of rogue cultivators, but his cautious approach allowed him to evade them. The profound patterned spirit mist concealed his presence, and no one detected him. Arhachek letter 1D63C letter 1D40D Ogrov smallcap Bs. Eventually, he reached the island's western side, where a patch of sandy ground had erupted. Flames and baleful fire spewed forth from a fissure in the ground, reaching heights of 8 or 9 kai. Black and red flames mixed with the choking fumes of fire baleful qi. Li Yuanjiao paused, his expression slightly odd. It seems Tu Longjian's path will bring him right past here. With the immortal mirror's aid, Li Yuanjiao had a complete view of the island, enabling him to discover this small fire vein. His spirits lifted as he casually made his way over, arriving ahead of Tu Longjian. Sitting cross-legged, he took out a jade bottle. He performed a qi gathering method, and the flames and baleful qi from the vein surged toward him, drawn into the jade bottle in long trails of black and red, forming a slender vortex. Working at a deliberate pace, Li Yuanjiao waited patiently for Tu Longjian to arrive. Within a dozen breaths, a figure clad in black feathered robes and standing on a flying shuttle appeared in the distance. The youth carried a long golden hammer over his shoulder and glanced over casually. Ah, this fire vein is perfect for refining the fiend fire spirit source. Tu Longjian took a few steps forward, noticing a cultivator extracting the fiend fire near the vein. At first, the figure's concealment artifact made him hard to spot. However, as golden light flickered in Tu Longjian's eyes, he discerned the grayish-white profound patterned spirit mist surrounding the figure. Tu Longjian froze for several breaths before his expression shifted to surprise and delight. Finally, I have found this senior. Chapter 591, Starry Night over the Cloudy Sea. Tu Longjian, dressed in black, lowered the long hammer resting on his shoulder and stored it in his storage pouch before stepping forward. He glanced at Li Yuanjiao and thought to himself, back then, I only saw the light of this artifact but never met this benefactor in person. It's possible he was already killed and the artifact was taken. I'll need to test him carefully to avoid any mistakes. He stepped forward, cupped his fist slightly, and greeted softly, Greetings, fellow Taoist. The figure shrouded in the profound patterned spirit mist remained highly alert, immediately putting away the jade bottle and turning toward Tu Longjian. A slightly hoarse voice emerged from within the mist. I have gathered enough of this fire baleful qi. The rest is yours. He seemed unwilling to cause trouble and gave a short response before turning to leave, but Tu Longjian couldn't let him go so easily. He stepped forward again, smiling as he said, "Fellow Taoist, do you recall the heir of Slaughter Jun we met briefly on the borders of Profound Peak back then?" Tu Longjian kept his words vague, fearing the man might have killed his benefactor and stolen the artifact. The figure in the mist paused briefly and asked doubtfully, "You are Tu Longjian. You have already reached the Foundation establishment realm." Hearing this, Tu Longjian did not relax his guard. Many people knew his name. He cautiously replied, "Senior, do you recall the spell I carried with me back then? What kind of spell was it?" Li Yunjiao hesitated for a moment. He of course remembered the Yang Nourishing Technique, a spell his family had used to convert long-marching fire essence into a usable grade 4 cultivation method. Using a slightly uncertain tone, he replied, "Yang Nourishing Technique. Ha." At this confirmation, Tu Longjian finally felt sure he was speaking to the right person. Genuine joy lit up his face as he exclaimed, "Senior, I have been searching for you everywhere." The profound patterned spirit mist around Li Yunjiao's figure dissipated slightly, revealing his appearance. He studied Tu Longjian carefully for a moment before saying softly, "Your accomplishments now are a continuation of Slaughter Jun Dao lineage. That is a good thing." Rather than emphasizing the favor he had done, Li Yunjiao chose to highlight his connection to the Slaughter Jun Dao lineage. After all, the reason he had spared Tu Longjian back then was due to his ties to the Dao lineage. Hearing this, Tu Longjian's eyes reddened slightly. He nodded and said, "Indeed, if my master and elders could see the man I have become today, they would surely smile. That would be enough for me." After a brief pause, Tu Longjian retrieved a reddish token from his robes. Black on the top and red on the bottom, its flowing lines caused Li Yunjiao to narrow his eyes slightly. Tu Longjian gently held the token aloft, performing a hand seal as he activated it, and asked, "May I ask Senior's name?" The fire baleful qi immediately surged toward the token, pouring into it in a steady stream. Within a few breaths, the baleful qi was completely absorbed. Tu Longjian put the token away, and only then did Li Yunjiao fully disperse the mist concealing his face. "Li Yunjiao," he answered. Tu Longjian looked him over, finding that Li Yunjiao's demeanor matched his expectations. Smiling, he asked, "Senior, are you here at Green Pine Temple hoping to enter the Grotto Heaven?" Li Yunjiao replied softly, "Just trying my luck. The Grotto Heaven is not something one can enter at will. If I cannot gain entry, collecting some spiritual qi would suffice." Tu Longjian nodded and said in a quiet tone, "If Senior is interested, why not join forces with me for a few days on the island? It might serve as mutual support." Li Yunjiao narrowed his eyes slightly and asked, "Do you have any companions? If we are to join forces, please introduce them." Tu Longjian chuckled and said lightly, "This junior has traveled alone and has no companions." Li Yunjiao was somewhat surprised. After a brief moment of thought, he nodded and said, "Very well, I too am alone. Allow me to attend to something and I will return shortly." "Please go ahead, Senior," Tu Longjian said with a humble fist cup. He watched as Li Yunjiao flew off on the wind, then sat cross-legged, deep in thought. His cultivation method is rather ordinary, with nothing particularly remarkable. At most, he seems like a clan cultivator. Back then I was just a lowly qi cultivator, my talents yet undiscovered. It shouldn't have been possible for someone to have schemed against me in advance. Tu Longjian stroked his chin as he thought to himself, "This is a matter of life and death. Having a helper is always good. Even if I can't escape in the end, leaving treasures or other things to repay a favor is better than letting the Taoist masters have them." As Li Yunjiao rode the wind away, he too was mulling things over with some surprise. Tu Longjian had not suggested bringing him into the Grotto Heaven, and Li Yunjiao wasn't in a rush. Staying close to Tu Longjian was enough, as the young cultivator was already a focal point of many Purple Mansion realm cultivators' attention. It was only a matter of time before he entered the Grotto Heaven. To Tu Longjian, Li Yunjiao likely appeared to be just a clan cultivator. Perhaps Tu Longjian was planning to wait for the Grotto Heaven to manifest more clearly before pretending to enter it by chance. But given the Purple Mansion realm cultivators' careful arrangements, Tu Longjian likely had a method to bring a few disciples into the Grotto Heaven. Yet he appeared to have no companions, which was curious. Pondering this, Li Yunjiao soon found Li Qinghang. The Grotto Heaven was incredibly dangerous, so it was impossible for Li Yunjiao to bring the immortal mirror inside. Without saying much, he handed the artifact to her and said softly, "There may be Purple Mansion realm cultivators guarding the perimeter of the island. Be vigilant." Letter 1E5F A tilde small cap N, O bar letter 162 epsilon letter 1E69, Li Qinghang understood Li Yunjiao's concern. using the immortal mirror to detect spirit treasures, could appear as though she possessed foreknowledge, potentially arousing suspicion. She nodded and replied softly, "I understand." Li Yunjiao took off, soaring into the sky and gradually disappearing. Li Qinghang remained at her post amidst the waves for a while before returning to her temporary dwelling on the sea. Li Yunjiao's errand took only a few hours, and he soon returned to Green Pine Island. He found Tu Longjian holding a golden hammer in one hand and a small storage pouch in the other, examining it carefully. A headless corpse kneeled before Tu Longjian, its body covered in green spots emitting a strong pine-like fragrance. In the brief moment since Li Yunjiao landed, the spots had begun sprouting, growing into small branches and leaves. As Li Yunjiao descended, Tu Longjian cupped his fist slightly and said, "An unwise fool crossed my path earlier. I have already dealt with him." He chuckled and added, "The grotto heaven is about to manifest, and the activity in the great void will surely be spectacular. Even if a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator dies, it will not cause much of a stir, which saves us from drawing unnecessary attention." Li Yunjiao nodded, glancing at the corpse. Whatever anomaly the body had caused had been suppressed, leaving no clue of the deceased's cultivation level. Tu Longjian approached with a cheerful expression and said, "Senior, why not walk with me around the island?" At the edge of the island, Li Xuanfeng stood silently in midair, holding his bow without speaking. On the ground below, Zhang Qian and Can Ziyu were carefully arranging a formation. Nearby, Lin Chensheng hovered in the air, observing quietly. Lacking knowledge of formations, both Li Xuanfeng and Lin Chensheng merely waited. Zhang Qian and Can Ziyu remained deeply focused on their work. Suddenly, Lin Chensheng's low voice echoed in Li Xuanfeng's ears. "Taoist Xuanfeng, are you a branch of Taoist Master Yuan Su's lineage?" Li Xuanfeng remained unmoved, responding softly with a voice carried by mana, "That is correct. May I ask where you are from?" Lin Chensheng's expression remained calm as he replied, "I am the nephew of Taoist Master Hufu." Chapter 592, Starry Night Over the Cloudy Sea II. Taoist Master Hufu was a rising figure of the great Ziyuqi Temple, a young and powerful cultivator with the potential to lead the temple in the future. Lin Chensheng's background was not insignificant. Li Xuanfeng nodded slightly as Lin Chensheng continued, "When we enter the grotto heaven, Taoist Ziyu and I will propose that we act separately. I suggest you do the same. It is better to proceed alone." Li Xuanfeng frowned slightly. Lin Chensheng elaborated through secret transmission. "In places like this, traveling with others is not ideal. You are more likely to become a stepping stone for others than to gain anything worthwhile." Li Xuanfeng fell silent for a moment before replying, "Thank you for the warning." Lin Chensheng smiled faintly. "No need to be overly polite. When we are in the grotto heaven, we can look out for each other if needed." Li Xuanfeng nodded. By this time, the two below had finished their formation and ascended on the wind. Can Ziyu said, "The great formation is ready. Everything is in place, we just need the grotto heaven to descend." The four exchanged a few words before entering a meditative state. The light between heaven and earth shifted several times as the day turned to evening. Finally, Lin Chensheng spoke abruptly, "It is coming." Li Xuanfeng exhaled and raised his gaze, spotting a brilliant light appearing above Green Pine Island. The light took the shape of a shallow arc, purple at the top and white at the bottom, slowly emerging from the great void. 5 colors shimmered across the arc, which descended gradually toward the earth. As the arc drew closer to the ground, more of its form became visible. Vast mountain ranges rose and fell within the clouds, faintly visible amidst the mist. Streams of light flickered and roamed across the terrain, casting an ethereal glow. Boom! A deafening thunderclap echoed through the sky as ochre-colored gold and stone fragments rained down. Out of nowhere, waterfalls cascaded from the air, transforming from purple-gold hues into blue-gold streams before landing below and swirling into violent deep blue winds. These winds grew dense, turning fiery red as flames erupted, coalescing into crystalline formations. The elements of earth, water, wind, and fire cycled in succession, producing countless streaks of light that shot off in all directions. The sea churned violently, its waters responding in kind by surging upward with torrents of multicolored spirit water. A swarm of rogue cultivators leaped into the air, engaging in chaotic battles overhead. Li Xuanfeng and his group ignored the fray, shielding Zhang Qian as their formation activated with a thunderous roar. One by one, the formation's glowing lines lit up, and with a muffled blast, all color vanished from Li Xuanfeng's sight. Everything became stark black and white. His thoughts grew sluggish as the objects before him stretched endlessly, distorting until they resolved into streams of black and white lines converging at a distant point. An electrifying jolt shot through his mind, followed by a sudden shift in vision. Darkness gave way to dazzling silver and white. The ground beneath him disappeared, and Li Xuanfeng suddenly found himself standing above an endless sea of clouds. Overhead, a boundless starry sky stretched into the distance, its brilliance unmatched. Beyond the clouds, distant mountain ranges rose and fell, shrouded in an eerie silence. The Green Pine Grotto Heaven. Li Xuanfeng immediately surveyed his surroundings and noticed Zhang Kaiyan and the others standing nearby, their faces filled with awe. Lin Chensheng whispered, "This should be Green Pine Temple." He raised his head to gaze at the stars and said in amazement, "As expected, the stars within this grotto heaven do not move." At this, the group instinctively lifted their heads to observe. Sure enough, every star appeared fixed in the heavens, glowing like immovable points of light. Unlike the stars of the outside world, which shifted, intersected, and realigned, these stars remained static. Li Xuanfeng's gaze fell upon a cluster of 7 bright stars resembling a ladle, and he said softly, "There are no sun or moon in this grotto heaven, only stars." "Correct," Lin Chensheng replied, his eyes scanning the sea of clouds as if searching for something. He exchanged a glance with Can Ziyu before the two cupped their fist respectfully and said, "Now that we have entered the grotto heaven, let us part ways and seek our fortunes independently." Zhang Kaiyan was slightly surprised by their words, as though he had more to say. However, seeing Li Xuanfeng also bid farewell with a cupped fist, Zhang Kaiyan could only nod and say, "Take care, everyone." Parting ways with the others, Li Xuanfeng carried his golden bow and flew north for a while. After pausing in midair for several breaths, he glanced down at the endless sea of clouds below him. "I wonder what lies beneath," he murmured. Forming a hand seal, a golden protective shield flared around his body. He cautiously descended into the clouds. A pale, moonlit mist surrounded him, and after a single breath, the dense layers of clouds began to thin and disperse. Letter 1D667, letter 1F01, newer epsilons. "It seems one enters this place at a high altitude," he observed. Breaking through the bottom of the cloud layer, Li Xuanfeng finally saw what lay ahead and froze in astonishment. Beneath him stretched another vast sea of clouds, endless and boundless. Above him remained the same endless starry sky, brilliant and infinite. In the distance, the mountain ranges rose and fell, winding endlessly, the same scene he had just witnessed. Li Xuanfeng looked up and noticed that the ladle-shaped cluster of 7 bright stars had now flipped upside down. If there was any difference between this view and the one above the clouds, this was the only distinction. For a moment, he stood bewildered before realization struck. There is no land here at all. Beneath the clouds is another starry night. He carefully summoned the wind, breaking through the sea of clouds as he moved forward, a growing question forming in his mind. If that's the case, then if there's a treasure above, might there also be one below? Suppressing the thought, he focused on the surrounding emptiness of the sea of clouds. This wasn't a place to waste time wandering aimlessly. Fixing his eyes on a distant mountain range, he directed his wind-borne path toward it. Boom! After flying for nearly an hour, a thunderous explosion echoed from the distant horizon. Li Xuanfeng glanced toward the source of the sound and saw several figures locked in a fierce battle over the sea of clouds. The combatants wore a mix of garments, some bearing traces of mainland sects. At the center of the group was a cultivator, holding 2 large bronze bowls high above his head. Within the bowls, purple lightning swirled, releasing strikes of profound lightning that struck his opponents. His attackers surrounded him, each wielding different weapons, long swords, hand seals, and spells. Their robes and garb revealed their diverse origins, yet they had formed a temporary alliance to besiege him. Among them, one man in a golden robe wielded twin blades, his expression fierce as he shouted, "Miao Yi, hand over the hidden cloud orb at once. Stop wasting everyone's time." The central figure, Miao Yi, showed no fear. Chuckling coldly, he continued to wield the bronze bowls, intensifying the surge of purple light. Meanwhile, his opponents, though cooperating, hesitated to reveal their own trump cards, resulting in a stalemate. The dual-blade wielder's expression grew increasingly grim. He clearly didn't want to waste more time here, but he couldn't bring himself to abandon the treasure in the other's hands. His face shifted multiple times as he wavered between choices. Li Xuanfeng had no intention of provoking trouble and didn't want to attract suspicion by passing directly through the area. He planned to dive into the surrounding mist and bypass the skirmish from another direction. However, the lightning-wielding cultivator with the bronze bowls laughed and taunted, "Sidu Chen, you better leave now. If you wait too long, everything will already have been divided up." Li Xuanfeng froze in midair, narrowing his eyes as he scrutinized the dual-blade wielder, Sidu Chen. A thoughtful expression crossed his face as his hand slowly reached behind him to unfasten the longbow on his back. Chapter 593, The Small Courtyard I. Sidu Chen's features were striking, with a high-bridged nose that bore a resemblance to Sidu Mo. Black and red fire enveloped him, swirling with ominous chi. His flames were unusual, taking on the shapes of various birds, their sheer power enough to shatter the bolts of lightning hurled at him. His dual blades moved with ferocity, slicing through the air with the force of a tiger's charge. The surrounding cultivators hesitated at the sight. Neither Miao Yi nor Sidu Chen was someone to trifle with. A confrontation between the two could only mean trouble, leaving little for others to gain. Gradually, the others dispersed, leaving the two locked in a standoff midair. Sidu Chen grew even more resolute. The hidden cloud orb was critical to forging his artifact. He said coldly, "I have no desire to waste time with you here. Why not name a price? Let us negotiate." Bah, Miao Yi sneered, spitting as he interrupted. "Motherfucker. Do you think I have forgotten how that flame shadow crow you wield came to be? It was Sidu Tang who stole my family's fortune on Mount Daoxuan and seized the technique. Now you dare feign civility and speak of negotiation. I spit on you." Sidu Chen's smile darkened as his expression grew cold. He retorted, "How dare you utter the Taoist master's name directly? If your family lost its fortune, you have only yourselves to blame. Your accusations are baseless." Miao Yi barked out a bitter laugh and said mockingly, "The old bastard is dead. I will curse him in front of your face. What can you do about it?" The two exchanged sharp words before erupting into battle. Li Xuanfeng, clad in his black gold spirit armor, dimmed its radiance and concealed himself within the clouds, silently observing the scene. "So, it is you. The Flame Shadow Crow. It really is the Flame Shadow Crow." Memories from Li Xuanfeng's youth in Lijiang Town resurfaced. A severe drought had struck Lichuanku village, emptying nearly every household. The Su family had been devoured, leaving only old Su alive, while Chen Erniu had fled to become a tenant farmer under the Li family. Old Su had died in front of Li Xuanfeng all those years ago, revealing a dark secret. Golden Tang Gate had orchestrated a demonic ritual to prepare Flame Shadow Crow Chi for the young master's cultivation, using monsters to kill humans and harvest fire energy. "Flame Shadow Crow Chi," Li Xuanfeng murmured. These events had taken place far in the past. Harvesting spiritual chi from heaven and earth often required years or even decades. Golden Tang Gate must have collected fire chi from multiple locations, their activities unnoticed amid the passage of time. Mortals with their short lifespans had little time to dwell on grief. Yet old Su, clutching 6-year-old Li Xuanfeng's trousers in his dying moments, had left a memory that stayed with him for over 70 years. Li Xuanfeng adjusted his longbow, and a quiver of arrows trembled. One leaped from the quiver to rest on the bowstring. Streams of golden light rapidly gathered and coalesced into the arrowhead. Standing silently, bow drawn, Li Xuanfeng held his position without firing. Instead, he slowly retreated into the clouds, keeping his presence hidden as he carefully memorized Sidu Chen's features. In this grotto heaven, they won't fight to the death. It's a petty skirmish over scraps, a case of losing the greater prize for smaller gains. This man, as the young master of Golden Tang Gate, is no easy target. If I act, it must be decisive. He cannot be allowed to escape or prepare defenses. Below him, the black-red flames around Sidu Chen surged higher with every swing of his twin blades. His strikes hurled arcs of fire at Miao Yi, who stood firm with lightning crackling between his bronze bowls. The two exchanged spells and techniques, testing each other through dozens of moves. Gradually, the battle intensified, sending shockwaves of flame and lightning scattering across the sky. As the clash dragged on, both began to show hesitation. In the grotto heaven, prolonging their fight risked leaving them vulnerable to opportunists. Reluctantly, they reached a tacit understanding and stopped. Sidu Chen sheathed his blades and snorted coldly before flying off toward a distant mountain range. Miao Yi spat in his direction before turning and heading the opposite way. Once the two separated, Li Xuanfeng concealed his spirit armor and silently followed after Sidu Chen, heading north through the clouds. As he moved through the mist, streaks of light grew increasingly common around him. Bright trails cut through the gray haze unabashedly, while dimmer and more subtle glimmers revealed the presence of at least a dozen other cultivators. The distribution within this cloud sea is unclear, but by rough estimation, there must be 40 or 50 people here. Of them, at least 10 carry threads of fate. If a fight breaks out, it will be quite the spectacle. After glancing around briefly, Li Xuanfeng pressed on. Before long, the mountain range began to emerge. Its deep brown base rose sharply from the clouds, towering toward the heavens. The slopes were covered in various types of spirit pines, their luminous needles reflecting a faint glow. A cyan wind whistled through the forest, scattering and drawing the clouds in rhythmic waves, creating the illusion of an island floating within a sea. Amid the vast pine forest, emerald green stone steps wound upward like the body of a great azure serpent dragon. The steps extended from the mountain's foot to its summit, flanked by pavilions and terraces, exuding an ethereal, celestial aura. As Li Xuanfeng approached the mountain, the wind surrounding him abruptly dispersed, forcing him to falter midair. Stumbling slightly, he landed at the mountain's foot. Taking a moment to identify the phenomenon, he realized the wind was heavy abyssal gale, a rare spiritual force capable of scattering flight techniques, disrupting spirit boats, stirring sandstorms, and interfering with magical artifacts. It was a highly coveted spirit material, even among Foundation establishment realm cultivators. Letter 211D Alpha, no beta ye letter 1E67, such a wind was exceptionally scarce in the present world, found only in trace amounts on the Great Western Plains. Even a wisp of it could be used to forge artifacts capable of disarming opponents. Released into the wild, it would cause rogue cultivators to fight fiercely over it. Yet here, the gale seemed endless, circling the mountain endlessly. None of the cultivators knocked from the sky's paws to gather it. Instead, they hurried toward the summit. Li Xuanfeng descended to the ground and noticed a black-robed man landing ahead of him. The man had coarse, shallow eyebrows and gaunt cheeks. Cupping his fist, he said, "I saw Taoist Xuanfeng from the skies earlier. The mountain is dangerous. Why not travel together?" The man was Lin Chensheng of the great Ziyuqi temple, who had warned him earlier. Li Xuanfeng had a good impression of him and raised an eyebrow before nodding lightly. Very well. The two began moving, stepping onto the stone pathway and advancing quickly while activating their footwork techniques. Ignoring the spirit pines lining the path, they headed toward the nearest pavilion. The pavilion was no larger than a small courtyard of a commoner's home. Two stone lions stood at its entrance. As Li Xuanfeng looked closer, he realized someone had already arrived. A female cultivator in a red robe stood at the courtyard gate, intently examining the pavilion. She held a small halberd in her arms, no longer than her forearm. The weapon, colored in shades of red and yellow, had 3 prongs at the tip that curved together like petals. It resembled a ceremonial artifact more than a weapon. As soon as Li Xuanfeng and Lin Chensheng stopped, the woman turned to glance at them warily. In a soft voice she said, "Taoists, I arrived here first. Please look elsewhere." Her gaze swept over Li Xuanfeng and froze when it landed on Lin Chensheng. Her eyes curved into a delighted expression as she exclaimed, "Brother Chensheng." Lin Chensheng was also somewhat surprised and responded, "So it is Taoist Yuzhuang." He gave a sincere smile and introduced her to Li Xuanfeng. "This is Taoist Bai Yuzhuang of the Hangzhou Dao Gate, a close friend of mine since childhood." Chapter 594, The Small Courtyard II. Turning to Bai Yuzhuang, Lin Chensheng smiled and said, "This is Li Xuanfeng, a capable and trusted aide of Taoist Master Yuansu." Bai Yuzhuang's attitude shifted noticeably as she responded with a smile, "I was just troubled over how to break this formation. I was at a loss for what to do." "Your arrival is timely. Why not work together to resolve it? That way, we can save time and avoid unnecessary entanglements." Lin Chensheng scratched his head awkwardly and cupped his fist. "You know I have never been skilled with formations, and Taoist Xuanfeng is not either. If Can Ziyu were here, perhaps we could give it a try." Bai Yuzhuang pondered for a moment before replying, "I have been studying this formation for some time. It is quite peculiar and carries an ancient flavor. It does not follow the 6-segment structure, nor the 9-pattern layout. Over the centuries, as the world changed and fruition attainments shifted, its original might has greatly diminished." She flipped her hand and retrieved several jade wedges from her storage pouch. Each wedge was attached to a few fine, elongated chains. She lightly tossed them, and the chain's ends gathered back into her hand as the jade wedges danced nimbly over the formation. Explaining as she worked, Bai Yuzhuang said, "This formation was likely established over 1,000 years ago, during a time when the pristine waters had yet to recede, and both bright yang and veiled yin were still present. It is even possible that the supreme yang and supreme yin still existed in the world. Hence, the formation relied on a yin-yang stabilization method for its core, making it exceptionally durable." Bai Yuzhuang continued, "The world today has changed far too much. Modern cultivators favor using the 5 virtues and 3 metals as the foundation for formations, almost entirely abandoning yin-yang methods. While the grotto heaven has mitigated the effects of these changes, flaws have inevitably appeared. With a gentle tug on the chains, Bai Yuzhuang revealed a series of glowing nodes across the formation. She pointed to a few of them and said softly, "If the two of you follow the guidance of my spiritual sense and strike at these weaknesses, the formation will break." Lin Chensheng flipped his wrist and brought out a talisman. The talisman was pitch black and shimmered faintly with multicolored light. He held it in his hand for a moment, then formed a seal and activated it, slamming it down with a loud bang. Clearly holding back, Lin Chensheng refrained from using his full strength. The formation flickered briefly under the impact but quickly regained its brightness. Li Xuanfeng raised his bow, but instead of nocking an arrow, he condensed a long streak of golden light and loosed it at the formation. He too held back his power, causing the formation to shake violently. The formation, clearly not meticulously crafted and more akin to a casual protective barrier, was already riddled with flaws. Under the combined effort of the three, it shattered into pieces. The two stone beasts flanking the gate dimmed and lost their vitality. The three ceased their attacks, and Bai Yuzhuang retrieved a resplendent white orb from her storage pouch, tossing it gently. The artifact landed and immediately transformed into a white-armored warrior. Though its cultivation was only at the peak of the Qi cultivation realm, it stood tall and dignified, its features symmetrical and calm. Without a word, it began marching toward the courtyard. "This reminds me of Yuan Tuan's Azure Crest manifestation," Li Xuanfeng thought to himself. He watched as the white-armored warrior pushed open the courtyard gate and boldly stepped inside. In the center of the courtyard lay a collapsed pile of rubble. The rubble was still intact enough to make out the form of a stone beast that once stood there. The creature was neither wolf nor tiger, and its shattered head on the ground bore 3 eyes and sharp fangs, giving it a ferocious appearance. Its third eye had a gemstone embedded in it, though its nature was unclear. Li Xuanfeng found the stone beast oddly familiar. After a moment's thought, he suddenly realized why. Taoist Master Yuan Su had a similar stone sculpture in front of his gates. Sure enough, both Lin Chensheng and Bai Yuzhuang turned their gazes toward him. Lin Chensheng said softly, "A 3-eyed Mount Tio beast." This beast was used in ancient times to guard formations and attract wealth. They were once fairly common, but the last known sighting was... Li Xuanfeng recalled that Yuan Su once owned a living spirit beast of this type, which had been killed by Sidu Tang of the Golden Tang Gate. He asked, "And this gemstone, what is it?" Neither Lin Chensheng nor Bai Yuzhuang could identify it, so Li Xuanfeng used his mana to retrieve it and said softly, "This item is connected to the spirit beast. I will return it to the Taoist master. Allow me to take it for now." The two nodded, watching as the white-armored warrior ransacked the pavilion and its side rooms, casually gathering an assortment of items and laying them out at the gate. Among the loot were several dozen ancient texts, over 10 jade bottles, and miscellaneous objects like jade pillows and mats. It seemed the courtyard's owner never anticipated intruders within the grotto heaven and had left without packing anything. Letter 211D letter 1D41A, N letter 1ED1 letter FF42, EHACHEK letter 1D668. Without wasting time, Lin Chensheng took the ancient texts and distributed them among the group according to customary practice, ensuring everyone could read through them. Li Xuanfeng examined the texts closely. 13 of them covered formations, 7 were cultivation manuals, and the remaining dozen or so were biographies, tales, and bestiaries, most revolving around sea dragons and related aquatic species. Bai Yuzhuang skimmed the formation manuals and sighed, "What a pity, such intricate formations." But with the changes in the world, most are no longer relevant. Li Xuanfeng focused on the cultivation manuals. 3 of them pertained to embryonic breathing realm techniques, including 2 Grade 4 manuals, 6 chapters seeking immortality and scaled beasts inquiry technique, and 1 Grade 5 manual titled Insights of Tehua. These ancient cultivators were certainly straightforward with their naming conventions, practical and unadorned, Li Xuanfeng thought. Among the 3 scaled beasts inquiry technique focused on cultivating the 6 chakras of the embryonic breathing realm, but the technique required transitioning exclusively to water-attributed methods afterward, which made it somewhat restrictive. The others were more flexible. However, 6 chapters seeking immortality included a specific note at the end, stating it could not be followed by ancient merging techniques. What are these ancient merging techniques? I've never heard of them before, and where would anyone find them now? Li Xuanfeng mulled over these for a while. The 3 embryonic breathing realm techniques were of no use to Li Xuanfeng personally, but they would be invaluable for the younger generation of his family. While he wasn't sure what techniques his relatives practiced beyond the Supreme Yin-breathing Meridian Nourishment Sutra, he was certain none of them had access to anything as high as grade 5 techniques. These days, only in a grotto heaven can such high-grade techniques be found. Li Xuanfeng pondered in awe. After memorizing the 3 manuals, he turned to the remaining 4 texts. 3 were Qi cultivation realm techniques, incomplete and seemingly excerpts the pavilion's owner had used to make a selection. The last, however, was a complete manual that reached the foundation establishment realm, suggesting it had ultimately been the owner's chosen path. It seems the owner of this courtyard settled on this one in the end. It was easy for Li Xuanfeng to reach this conclusion. Qi cultivation realm techniques were of little interest to him, so Li Xuanfeng skimmed over them. However, he carefully examined the Foundation Establishment Realm manual. The ancient book had a unique texture, firm, durable, and unlike anything common. The title, written in bold, clean characters, read, Teiyu Northern Dawn Manual. Intrigued, Li Xuanfeng opened the first page, preparing to study it in detail. Chapter 595, Moonlit Spirit Barrier. Just as Li Xuanfeng opened the book, an entire row of inked characters abruptly blurred, leaping off the page one after another in a cascade of light before vanishing entirely. The ancient book flipped wildly in the air, its pages turning with a loud whoosh. Li Xuanfeng was struck by a wave of dizziness, and in his ears he heard the sound of waves crashing north to south, filling the heavens and earth. The waves collided against cliffs, followed by a cold rain pouring down. With a bang, the book disintegrated into ash, scattering across the ground. Yet the moment the ash touched the earth, it transformed into black ants, wriggling frantically as they scurried away and disappeared into the soil. Li Xuanfeng's mind buzzed, and his gaze dropped to his own hands in a momentary daze. Nearby, Lin Chensheng turned to him and asked, Taoist, did you finish reading all 6 of those techniques? Snapped out of his stupor, Li Xuanfeng lifted his head and nodded. Yes, I have read them all. Unfortunately, none of them exceed the Qi cultivation realm. Lin Chensheng chuckled softly and replied, No need to worry. Once the 3rd drum sounds in the sea of clouds, there will be plenty to choose from. Li Yuanjiao and Tu Longjian wandered through the forest for a while, the surroundings soon becoming enveloped in thick white mist. Growing suspicious, Li Yuanjiao said softly, Taoist, this mist rises strangely, be cautious. Tu Longjian smiled faintly, his gaze sweeping across the mist. This fog can block spiritual senses. It is indeed peculiar. Let us take to the skies instead. Stay close behind me and do not fall behind. Li Yuanjiao, ever cunning, heard this and immediately suspected something. He deduced with 70% certainty that the descent of the grotto heaven was imminent. Nodding, he took to the air, sticking closely to Tu Longjian's side. As soon as they rose into the sky, the setting sun on the horizon vanished in an instant, replaced by a brilliant expanse of stars. The stars hung motionless, perfectly aligned in the heavens. The surrounding ocean had completely disappeared, leaving behind an endless sea of clouds and undulating mountain ranges. Feigning alarm, Li Yuanjiao exclaimed, This is not good. We have fallen into someone's illusory formation. Tu Longjian's expression grew serious as he scrutinized Li Yuanjiao's reaction. Seeing this, his final doubts dissipated. Laughing heartily, he said, Senior, this is none other than the mirrored mirage grotto heaven. Li Yuanjiao's expression turned to one of genuine surprise. The plan had always been to reach the Green Pine Grotto heaven, so how had the mirrored mirage suddenly come into play? Sensing his confusion, Tu Longjian explained, the Green Pine Temple lies within the mirrored mirage grotto heaven, which has remained sealed for countless years. Those ignorant of its secrets simply linked the 2 names together. The Taoist masters have been more than happy to let this misnomer persist. Continuing his explanation, Tu Longjian said, This grotto heaven was originally created by the ancient cultivator Yings, borrowing from the Tao lineage of the immortal Lord. How could it have been called Green Pine Grotto heaven? Li Yuanjiao outwardly feigned shock at this revelation, but inwardly his thoughts churned with even greater alarm. Based on Tu Longjian's words and actions thus far, he felt increasingly certain this man has almost certainly uncovered the truth. Perhaps even freed himself from the control of the Taoist masters. Furrowing his brows, Li Yuanjiao let a mix of joy and apprehension cross his face. Speaking in a low tone, he said, Since we have been fortunate enough to enter, this is undoubtedly a great opportunity. Whether or not we leave here alive, however, that is another matter entirely. Tu Longjian gave a slight nod, and Li Yuanjiao cupped his fist respectfully. It seems that Taoist Longjian is well versed in the grotto heaven. I will have to rely on you for the remainder of our journey. Tu Longjian smiled and replied, Senior, there is no need for such formality. After exchanging a few words, the two agreed to continue traveling together. Li Yuanjiao, uninterested in the treasures of the grotto heaven, was focused on finding Yu Muxian. He wondered whether his elder had already encountered him or even begun fighting. Tu Longjian rose into the air alongside him, choosing a random direction. Standing at ease on the clouds, his gaze fixed on the distant mountain ranges, while the token at his waist swayed lightly. After orienting himself, he selected a route through the layers of clouds. They flew for a while before hearing the sounds of commotion and combat. "Someone has beaten us to it." Tu Longjian frowned, muttering his displeasure. The golden hammer reappeared in his hand. Moments later, the clouds ahead began to tremble violently as lights of various spells and techniques clashed in midair. The sound of artifacts striking each other rang out like metal on metal. Letter 1 D667, letter 1 D400, letter 1 D40D, letter 22F. About 5 or 6 cultivators surrounded a small hill, warily guarding against one another. Atop the hill was a tall stone platform, upon which rested a small jade bottle. The bottle was intricately carved with silver osmanthus blossoms and encased in a silver-white spirit barrier. Its purpose or origin was unclear, but the edges of the barrier exuded strands of moonlit mist, ethereal and serene, giving it an extraordinary, otherworldly quality. At the center of the group stood a middle-aged man in a dark Taoist robe, his expression cold and stern. Tall and thin, his robes were adorned with subtle patterns that spoke of exceptional craftsmanship, marking them as refined Dharma attire. In his hand, he held a purple sandalwood duster and scanned the crowd with icy eyes, speaking softly. "This Foundation Establishment Realm's spirit barrier belongs to Changxiao Gate. Consider your actions carefully, all of you." Nearby, a red-robed cultivator sneered in response, his tone mocking as he retorted, "Well then, Zun Yizi, take your precious barrier and leave. Let the rest of us see what kind of treasure lies within that jade bottle." The tall, gaunt man in the Taoist robes didn't respond, his cold gaze sweeping over the crowd. From their perch amidst the clouds, Li Yuanjiao and Tu Longjian silently observed the scene, their eyes scanning the 5 or 6 cultivators. Among them was a female cultivator in a light purple Taoist robe. Petite and refined, she stood atop a floating cloud, carefully examining the object within the spirit barrier. One delicate hand held a small golden mountain, while the other gripped a jade orb. She was none other than Kong Tingyun of the Profound Peak Gate. On the opposite side stood a young man with a refined appearance, his brows furrowed as if debating whether to retreat. Though Li Yuanjiao had only seen him a few times, the young man's face was etched into his memory. Zhang Qian. Li Yuanjiao continued observing, scrutinizing the identities and backgrounds of the others. Meanwhile, Tu Longjian's gaze burned with intensity as he murmured, "Senior, whatever's inside that jade bottle must be something extraordinary. If a fight breaks out, just worry about keeping yourself safe." Hearing this, Li Yuanjiao shifted his focus to the tall platform. The platform itself was unremarkable, constructed of ordinary materials. The silver-white spirit barrier atop it, however, was far from ordinary. Its faint glow exuded an aura of strength, and its 4 corners were engraved with motifs of moon rabbits, marking it as a Foundation Establishment Realm artifact from the ancient cultivators. Within the barrier, a silver-white bottle seemed to faintly emerge and recede. Overflowing with spiritual energy, the bottle's moonlit patterns were ancient and enigmatic, yet oddly familiar. The moonlit mist drifting around the bottle was so familiar it could not be mistaken. Li Yuanjiao silently chuckled to himself. The sight of the mist was unmistakable. He had seen it thousands of times in his own household. He knew exactly what it was, and its value was enough to drive every cultivator present mad with greed, supreme yin moonlight essence. Crow's thoughts. Hey everyone, this is a message from all the readers currently working on the Mirror Legacy wiki page. There is also a family tree. One of our fellow TML readers, Glimp, has started a wiki page for the novel, and we're working together to expand it. Open book, check it out here. As of now, a lot of the other readers on Discord are joining in and contributing. Due to the complex dynamics of this novel, we need more contributors to make this a full-fledged wiki. If you're interested in helping out, join our Discord and check out the thread from the Mirror Legacy channel. Let's build this together. Chapter 596, The 6 Platforms of the Grand Hall. Li Yuanjiao was witnessing supreme yin moonlight outside of his family's residence for the first time. Encased in a silver-plated ancient jade bottle adorned with ancient talismans, it was placed reverently on a jade platform, further shielded by an ancient spirit barrier. Even in this grotto heaven, it was clear this object was treated with the utmost respect. The jade platform was intricately carved with various formations, suggesting it was once used to assist cultivation or extract secondary spiritual qi. However, these formations had long since lost their functionality, now appearing as mere decorative patterns. In his family's secret chamber, where streams of moonlight essence flowed freely, Li Yuanjiao had grown accustomed to its silvery glow. It was ordinary to him, almost mundane. Yet, when placed in this ceremonial setting, its rarity and value became strikingly evident. The silver-white radiance was dazzling. Li Yuanjiao remained composed, but the cultivators around the platform began to recognize the item. The atmosphere quickly grew tense. The Jiangnan region had once been the site of the Moonlight Origin Mansion, with its Taoist legacy passed down through generations of immortal sects. Each family guarded its collection of ancient techniques, smithing methods, and divine abilities, making such treasures highly coveted. Even if one couldn't use it personally, delivering it to a Purple Mansion realm Taoist master would bring immense rewards. The gathered cultivators' eyes grew bloodshot, their greed palpable. Only a few retained their composure, and even those few seemed less immune to temptation than ignorant of the object's true nature. Among them, the tall and slender Zun Yizi, dressed in dark Taoist robes, was the first to recognize the treasure. He gripped the corner of his robe with one hand while clutching a purple sandalwood duster in the other. His wide, unblinking eyes seemed ready to fall from their sockets. Sweeping his gaze across the crowd, Zun Yizi spoke first, saying, "There are 6 of us here, 4 from the 3 sects and 7 gates of Yue State. If this treasure is to be shared, it should remain with Yue State. Overseas cultivators would do well to leave immediately." His words carried an obvious implication. Both Zhang Qian and the red-robed man's expressions shifted subtly. The red-robed man sneered and retorted, "Zun Yizi, your petty schemes are laughable, trying to drive others away with vague words. How dare you bring such trickery to the table? I for one will flip the table over." Laughing aloud, he cupped his fist toward the surrounding 5 people and declared, "Let it be known to all, this treasure is none other than the long-lost Supreme Yin Moonlight. The ancient texts mention it under names such as Veiled Supreme Yin Qi, Great Moonlight Instrument, or even Extreme Yin. They all refer to this very item." The booming voice echoed across the clouds, causing a ripple of spiritual energies to stir nearby. It was as if the speaker feared no one would recognize the object and loudly proclaimed its identity, watching the surrounding cultivators' expressions of shock and awe with a triumphant laugh. Gu Honger, the face of Zun Yizi, clad in dark robes, darkened severely. He muttered the name under his breath, while the red-robed man, unperturbed, casually dusted off his robes and slid a token into his sleeve. With an indifferent hum, he turned and walked away. "Fight amongst yourselves as you will. Consider this my courtesy to all of you. Crimson Reef Island will not be joining the fray." His parting words left Zun Yizi seething with rage, his fury plain as he realized the trap Gu Honger had laid for him. The glances from the others surrounding the platform told him that there would be no peaceful resolution now. The tension hung thick in the air for several moments before a young cultivator dressed in black cupped his fist respectfully and said, "Such treasures are beyond my means. I shall not involve myself in this matter." The speaker was none other than Zhang Qian. Known for his low profile, he clearly recognized the immense trouble possession of this item would bring. Without hesitation, he turned and flew off. Zun Yizi scanned the remaining 4 individuals and the faint, hidden presences lingering in the clouds above. He spoke in a deep tone, "If anyone here withdraws, consider it a personal favor to Zun Yizi of the Chengxiao Gate." His plea fell flat, eliciting little response. The cultivators stood silently, their gazes fixed intently on the silver-shrouded treasure atop the jade platform. Realizing diplomacy had failed, Zun Yizi abruptly sprang into action, his hand reaching for the object. Boom. A thunderous explosion erupted as 5 or 6 artifacts flew toward him, intercepting his grasp. Expecting resistance, Zun Yizi feinted, drawing back his outstretched hand and instead attacking a nearby cultivator with his purple sandalwood duster. "You," the cultivator yelped. Chaos unfolded as beams of light shot across the sky, their radiance interweaving in dazzling displays. Several cultivators unleashed their immortal foundations, their artifacts clashing with deafening force. Meanwhile, Li Yuanjiao and Tu Longjian remained aloft, silently observing the unfolding battle. Tu Longjian squinted, his spiritual sense weaving in and out as it exchanged information with the token hanging at his waist. He waited for the opportune moment. Li Yuanjiao swept his gaze across the field and spotted Kang Tingyun using her jade orb to block incoming attacks. She stood quietly at the battlefield's edge, one hand supporting the small golden mountain she seemed to be weighing, considering where to hurl it. Letter 1E5D, letter 1D4B6, letter 22F, B, yeah, letter 219. Having witnessed the devastating effects of Kong Tingyun's Golden Mountain before, Li Yunjiao knew its unanticipated power, especially against spellcasting cultivators. Tu Longjian hoisted his slender, pole-like golden hammer, appearing ready to strike. Li Yunjiao spoke softly, "Fellow Taoist, that cultivator from the Profound Peak Gate is an old acquaintance of mine. Perhaps we could coordinate our efforts." Tu Longjian nodded in understanding. "Let us strike now." None of them seemed particularly formidable. He wasted no time. Tu Longjian hoisted his golden hammer and descended with the wind, streaking downward like a bolt of lightning. Tu Longjian's hammer was an unusual Dharma artifact, slender and elongated. The hammerhead itself was only about half the size of an average human head, while the shaft more closely resembled a spear or polearm. Its design made it seem less like a traditional hammer and more like a long-handled weapon as it swung downward with precision. The golden-robed cultivator below, his affiliation unknown, caught sight of the descending hammer. His expression shifted instantly to shock and fear as he recognized the descending figure, Tu Longjian. Abandoning the spell he had been casting, he ignored his opponent entirely and slapped the jade pendant at his waist. Streams of light surged upward from his body and coalesced into a formidable shield. A sharp, shattering sound rang out as the shield splintered and dissolved into dust under the hammer's force. Tu Longjian pursued his target without pause, striking with relentless precision. Within a dozen exchanges, the cultivator took a heavy blow to the chest, spat out blood, and fled into the cloud sea, vanishing without a backward glance. Li Yunjiao recalled Tu Longjian's earlier words and decided not to intervene. Instead, he activated the profound patterned spirit mist, edging slowly toward the battlefield's periphery. As he approached, a woman in a pale yellow-green feathered robe turned sharply toward him, her voice cold and alert. "Who goes there?" Li Yunjiao subtly revealed the outline of the profound patterned spirit mist. The woman, Kong Tingyun, hesitated, her expression uncertain. "Brother Yunjiao, it is me," he replied calmly. Kong Tingyun's tension eased, her face lighting up with a mix of relief and surprise. "You made it in as well. At least I have someone to rely on now. You should be careful, this place is full of hidden dangers." Li Yunjiao hovered midair, speaking evenly. "I entered with a companion to gather qi on the island. We had not expected to end up here." Chapter 597, The Six Platforms of the Grand Hall. I see. Kong Tingyun retreated a step, distancing herself slightly from the main battlefield. The two observed from a vantage point among the clouds as she quietly explained the situation. "The item in the center is Supreme Yin Moonlight. It is nearly impossible to claim, but I am here to see who ultimately takes it." She smiled slyly, her eyes narrowing with a hint of cunning. "Right now it is out of reach, but that could change." Li Yunjiao understood her implication and nodded lightly. The two exchanged a few words as the battle below began to resolve itself. The cultivator in black robes, Zun Yizi, had initially been the strongest among the combatants. His superior techniques had allowed him to fend off their attacks until Tu Longjian intervened, disrupting the stalemate and unwittingly easing the pressure on Zun Yizi. Now the two stood at a tense impasse around the jade platform, while the other cultivators who hadn't yet withdrawn continued circling the battlefield in the surrounding cloud sea. Zun Yizi looked visibly displeased. He recognized Tu Longjian immediately, as well as the 6 Ding merging fire token at his waist. This ancient spirit artifact was famed for its ability to subdue demons and was equally formidable against cultivators. As Tu Longjian activated the token, torrents of gray flame surged outward, exuding oppressive heat. The surrounding cultivators instinctively stepped back, shielding themselves from the scorching energy. Zun Yizi, standing closest, broke out into a sweat under the blazing pressure. Zun Yizi and Tu Longjian both leveraged the unspoken rule that no one in a grotto heaven wanted to risk grievous injury. However, the moment Tu Longjian produced an ancient spirit artifact, the situation reversed. Better to avoid him for now. There will be plenty of time for him to suffer later. Zun Yizi stepped back several paces, gritted his teeth, and ultimately retreated into the cloud sea, disappearing from view as Tu Longjian had anticipated. Tu Longjian shook his head slightly, channeling his power into the silver spirit barrier. As the silver-white spirit barrier's engraved jade rabbits lit up one after another, Tu Longjian performed a series of incantations. The barrier rapidly shrank into his palm, and he collected the jade bottle, scanning the cloud sea. The surrounding cultivators hesitated briefly but eventually withdrew. Kong Tingyun glanced at him, quickly understanding, and asked, "This Tu Longjian, is he your friend?" "An acquaintance," replied Li Yuanjia with a slight nod. Kong Tingyun appeared worried, muttering softly, "This man is formidable. Among the Foundation establishment realm cultivators here, he is likely among the top tier. Be cautious and measured." The two watched as Tu Longjian stowed the treasure. A flicker of light crossed his gaze, and in moments he located them in the cloud sea. Flying over, he greeted Kong Tingyun with a cool, distant tone, "Greetings, fellow Taoist." Kong Tingyun returned the gesture politely. Tu Longjian turned to Li Yuanjia, his tone notably warmer. "Senior, we should head for the mountains without delay. If we tarry, we will miss the chance to claim something valuable." Li Xuanfeng and his two companions departed the small courtyard, employing swift footwork techniques as they ascended the mountain. The cave dwellings they passed were desolate, clearly having already been explored by cultivators who then moved toward the summit. As they approached the mountain's peak, they came upon more than 10 figures gathered before a grand hall, silently examining the formations etched into its surface. None made a move to enter. Li Xuanfeng narrowed his eyes, quickly spotting a familiar figure in golden robes amidst the crowd. The man was youthful and handsome, with twin blades strapped to his back, his entire form enveloped in dark black flames. It was no surprise to Li Xuanfeng to see Sidu Chen here, given that he had been tracking him. Avoiding unnecessary attention, Li Xuanfeng shifted his gaze to the grand hall itself. The hall, constructed primarily in shades of pale blue and white, exuded grandeur. The floor was paved with white jade-like tiles, etched with elegant patterns, while massive jade pillars flanked the entrance. At the far end sat an immortal throne, flanked by 6 jade platforms. On each platform rested a jade box. 5 of the boxes sat undisturbed, faintly glowing. However, the final platform presented a peculiar sight. 2 figures were frozen there, one sitting cross-legged with a pale face, one hand resting on his knee and the other clutching his chest, a gleaming sword impaled through his torso. The blade protruded from his back, flashing cold light. The second figure kneeled before the jade platform, left hand raised as if to seize something, right hand planted on the ground. The jade box from the platform lay cracked on the floor, its corner chipped. These figures appeared lifelike, as if only moments ago locked in fierce combat. The scene seemed to have been frozen in time, the hall itself preserving their moment of confrontation. From Li Xuanfeng's vantage point, the inside of the jade box was visible completely empty save for a small, circular indentation. The hollow was approximately the thickness of a pinky finger, suggesting it once housed a ring-shaped Dharma artifact. At the very center of the grand hall stood a massive copper bell, adorned with 2 peculiar and intricate patterns. It hung silently, suspended in the middle of the hall, exuding an aura of mystery. Beneath the bell, 6 meditation mats were arranged neatly, with an assortment of items placed upon them. Most of these were partially opened ancient tomes, alongside small, portable Dharma artifacts. These items were either set atop the mats or carefully placed beside them, creating an impression of abundance yet maintaining a remarkable sense of order. The formation within the hall flickered intermittently, casting an ever-changing glow. The cultivators gathered outside the hall stood still, none daring to step inside. They watched intently, exchanging cautious glances, each waiting for someone else to make the first move. Lin Chensheng cast a glance at the scene and transmitted a message quietly with his mana. "Do you recognize the 2 people in the hall?" Li Xuanfeng squinted, observing the figure with a sword through their chest. The robes looked familiar, and after some thought, he realized they bore a resemblance to the attire of Azure Pond's sect, though not entirely identical. Beside him, Bai Yuzhuang spoke softly. "Could that be Yu Ziuxian? Was he not the senior disciple of Yunwu Peak?" "It seems it might be." Lin Chensheng carefully examined the figure, nodding as he spoke in a low tone. "Yu Ziuxian was killed by Gu back then. Yunwu Peak even stormed into the Eastern Sea, causing a huge uproar until Gu Shentong made extensive reparations. I did not expect that he truly died here in the Grotto Heaven." The two discussed for a while, glanced at the other unidentified cultivators' remains, and eventually gave up trying to determine their identity. Suddenly, they saw a streak of golden light rise in the distance. It followed the emerald jade pathway and eventually descended in front of the grand hall. The golden light slowly dissipated, revealing 2 figures. One was a man with a grim expression, clad in a black and gold Taoist robe, wielding a long halberd. His cultivation was at the late Foundation establishment realm, and he stood staring at the figure inside the grand hall. His Taoist robe bore a striking resemblance to the attire worn by the skeleton within the hall, sharing at least 7 parts of its design. The second individual was also at the late Foundation establishment realm, dressed in flowing white robes that exuded an otherworldly elegance. He held a longsword in one hand, while his waist was adorned with a crystalline, translucent jade buckle. His jet-black hair flowed freely, and his expression was cold and indifferent as his sharp gaze scanned the grand formation. Lin Chensheng and Bai Yuzhuang exchanged glances, their suspicions solidifying. Lin Chensheng whispered, "That is Tang Shedu from Yunwu Peak. Judging by his attire, the skeleton inside must be Yu Ziuxian. As for that man in white, I have never seen him before." Li Xuanfeng remained silent, his gaze seemingly casual but briefly pausing at the jade buckle on the white-robed man's waist. Within his heart, he murmured quietly, "Yu Muxian." Chapter 598, The Unspeaking Bell Eye. The number of figures on the mountain increased steadily. Besides a few familiar faces and recognizable Taoist robes, there were many and unfamiliar attire-likely cultivators from Wu State or the northern regions, each standing silently amidst the clouds. After a few moments, a figure finally stepped forward from the crowd. He appeared young, dressed in white robes embroidered with faint gold patterns at the cuffs, and carried no visible weapons. With a calm demeanor, he cupped his fist and surveyed the gathered crowd before speaking softly. "Standing idly gains us nothing. Whatever we aim to contend for, the first step is to break this formation. I am Nian Yi of the Yue cultivating sect. If there are no objections, let us of the upper sects organize and open the formation." His mastery of flight techniques was evident. Despite the tumultuous presence of heavy abyssal gale in the sky, he remained suspended midair, though unable to move freely. This subtle display of control over the wind immediately set him apart. The reputation of the Yue cultivation sect preceded him, standing high among the immortal sects. His words carried weight, and none dared openly challenge him. Most exchanged glances or gazed downward, remaining silent. Moments later, a middle-aged man descended from the clouds. He wore simple attire, with a long blade strapped to his back. Standing with arms crossed, he said plainly, "Zhang Yun of the Golden Feather sect." His aura was serene, unshakable like a still lake, yet it caused the crowd to steal nervous glances. Even Nian Yi was visibly surprised. He quickly bowed with a cupped fist and said, "I did not expect the senior himself to arrive. Forgive me for my impoliteness." Zhang Yun waved dismissively. Below, two figures rose from the clouds, the black and gold-robed man and Yu Muxian coming to stand nearby. A deep voice announced, "Azure Pond Sect, Yunwu Peak, Tang Shedu and Yu Muxian." The participation of Yue State's three great sects was now apparent. However, no overseas cultivators made a move. Then, a man in green-gray robes with a jade crown and handsome features ascended into the air and stood amidst the clouds. Qingzhu of Mount Changhui, Wu State. Nian Yi and Zhang Yun showed no surprise at his arrival, as though it was expected. Qingzhu, however, swept his gaze over the crowd below before speaking in a gentle yet commanding tone. "The Dao lineage of the Green Pine Temple spreads across Wu and Yue. It is only right for us to claim the treasures of this hall. As for the Jiangbei and overseas cultivators, I suggest you disperse to the outer clouds. Perhaps fortune will smile upon you there." The announcement sparked mixed reactions among those below. Some faces brightened, while others grew grim. Li Xuanfeng briefly glanced at Lin Chensheng and Bai Yuzhuang, noting their lack of surprise. He thought to himself, the Taoist masters of Jiangnan have already divided things among themselves. This is no different from the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven years ago. That one even had Taoist masters present, making the process even stricter. The three great sects, all part of Golden Core Dao lineages, along with Mount Changhui, commanded authority. Many Eastern Sea cultivators took the hint, rising into the air and dispersing across the skies. 7 or 8 out of 10 departed, leaving only 2 individuals still lingering. Qingzhu cast them a glance. One of them, seemingly nervous, stepped forward and began, "I am of the Chunyi Dao." Before he could finish, Qingzhu frowned slightly and cut him off with an impatient expression. He said nothing further, but turned respectfully toward Zhang Yun and remarked, "I thought the senior had already secluded himself to break through to the Purple Mansion realm. I did not expect him to personally come to this grotto heaven." Zhang Yun shook his head lightly without elaborating. Qingzhu then took out a token from his robes. The token, made of green-gray jade, bore 3 ancient characters. Though it seemed unremarkable at first glance, Li Xuanfeng used his perception technique to focus on it. For an instant, the characters on the token became clear. Changhui. The history-rich Yi Mountain City provided ample exposure to ancient texts and scripts. Li Xuanfeng instantly recognized the near-archaic writing style. As the token glimmered faintly, the grand formation brightened briefly, then silently vanished. No dazzling explosions or defenses emerged. The formation simply dissipated in full view of the gathered cultivators. The token of Mount Changhui is actually capable of undoing this formation, Li Qianfeng thought in shock. As soon as the grand formation was broken, before anyone could act, beams of light erupted in all directions. The figure seated cross-legged began to convulse violently, and a crystalline pale blue sword burst out from their chest, like a ferocious falcon, shooting into the skies above. Alpha Nya above Smolkappa Ya Letterwinda Faya, the figure's remains instantly turned to ash, scattering into golden light that transformed midair into flocks of golden sparrows. The sparrows fluttered their wings with lifelike vigor, chirping melodiously as they darted in all directions. Meanwhile, the figure reaching for the jade box collapsed with a dull thud, their entire body disintegrating into a wave of red heat. Their chest and abdomen exploded in two fiery bursts of crimson light, scattering large and small red jade beads that rolled across the hall's floor. The 6 jade boxes on the platforms began to tremble, the sound of their shifting filling the air. Meanwhile, the scattered Dharma artifacts and books on the meditation mats began to stir, some awkwardly propping themselves up before soaring away on the wind. In an instant, beams of light filled the hall, creating a spectacular sight. Lin Chensheng's black robes fluttered as he, having already chosen his target, leaped toward the 4th meditation mat with swift precision. The colorful light within the hall surged forth, seemingly unaffected by the heavy abyssal gale outside. Several ancient texts flipped open their pages as they shot into the air with astonishing speed. Before anyone could speak, a chaotic skirmish broke out. Among the Dharma artifacts soaring through the air, a small mirror stood out, only palm-sized but radiating a striking violet-gold brilliance. It immediately drew everyone's attention. Several cultivators took to the skies, reaching for the artifact, only for a golden hammer to come crashing down in their midst. "This belongs to me." A black-clad cultivator wielding a long hammer charged forward with commanding presence. His mastery of wind-riding techniques allowed him to ascend high into the air, where he hovered over the fray. The power of his Dharma artifact forced 2 opponents to retreat instantly. With his other hand, he conjured a wave of gray flames that swept outward, sending several adversaries scurrying back. With a swift incantation and release, he seized the violet gold mirror with ease. This act of audacity enraged the crowd. Within moments, 5 or 6 spells were launched toward the black-clad man. Instead of retreating, he surged forward, boldly flying straight into the great hall. While the battle outside reached a fevered pitch, Zhang Yun and the other elite cultivators refrained from remaining outside. They entered the hall together, moving in unison, and the rest dared not follow. Now, the bold intrusion of the black-clad cultivator caused a brief hesitation among those outside. Li Qianfeng, however, paid little attention to the wider conflict. Fixing his gaze on a nearby Dharma manual, he seized his opportunity. Boom! With a thunderous stomp, he propelled himself 5 zhang into the air without invoking wind-riding techniques, snatching the Dharma manual midair with a single, decisive motion. Around him, the others had already pursued their own targets, leaving an unoccupied patch of space. No one contested him, and the Dharma manual was unexpectedly easy to grab, easier than I expected. Just as that thought crossed his mind, Li Qianfeng realized that the truly valuable items in the hall were the remaining 5 jade boxes. The Dharma artifacts and ancient texts scattered across the mats were little more than remnants left behind, their prolonged exposure to the grand formation merely granting them a faint semblance of sentience. Chapter 599, The Unspeaking Bell, II. As Li Qianfeng clenched the page in his hand, its fleeting spiritual energy dissipated instantly. The artifact reverted to an inert state. Glancing back at the skies, he saw only 2 or 3 items still soaring amid the melee as the cultivators fought over them. Mindful of his true objective, Li Qianfeng chose not to reveal his strength unnecessarily. He tucked the Dharma manual into his sleeve, swiftly changed positions, and activated his black gold spirit armor, vanishing into the cover of the pine forest. Not long after, 2 beams of light closed in on his previous location. One was a gray-clad cultivator draped in a brown-gray Taoist robe. With narrow eyes and a high-bridged nose, he held a duster in his hand, clearly a disciple of the Changxiao Gate. The other was a white-robed, middle-aged cultivator, gripping a long sword. Standing atop a jade-colored flying shuttle, his gaze shimmered with spiritual light, a clear indication of advanced perception techniques. Both had evidently locked onto the Dharma manual earlier. Though Li Qianfeng had moved quickly, his presence had already been detected in the moments leading up to his retreat. The white-robed cultivator fixed his gaze on the man clad in black gold armor and holding a longbow, and stiffened in surprise. After a tense silence, his voice broke with shock. Xuanfeng. Li Xuanfeng froze for a moment, staring at the man's brows and eyes. After a brief pause, he exclaimed in realization, Senior Yongling. The white-robed middle-aged man was none other than Xiao Yongling, also known as Man on Mount Feather, an old acquaintance of Li Tangye. The two elders had formed their friendship during their days as minor cultivators in the embryonic breathing realm, making Xiao Yongling a respected senior to Li Xuanfeng. The gray-robed cultivator from Changxiao Gate immediately noticed their familiarity and sensed trouble. Without uttering a word, he turned and fled, hurriedly heading out of the forest. His escape spell left a long trail of light in the night, stark against the darkness. In his haste, he nearly collided with a blue-green spirit pine. Xiao Yongling, for reasons unknown, chose not to pursue. Li Xuanfeng, similarly, let the man leave without interference. Instead, he turned to Xiao Yongling, seeing his expression shift between amazement and joy. Li Xuanfeng cupped his fist in greeting and said, I pay my respects to Senior. Congratulations on reaching the late Foundation establishment realm. Xiao Yongling waved dismissively, though his face still bore traces of his earlier surprise. Recognizing that this was not the place for extended conversation, Li Xuanfeng quickly took out the manual he had obtained and shook his head. Our luck has not been great. This is just a minor letter. To avoid misunderstandings, Li Xuanfeng promptly handed the letter to Xiao Yongling. The white-robed man didn't refuse. Taking it, he read it carefully. Thanks to his extensive knowledge, he recognized the ancient script. Junior brother do. Retrieving chestnuts from the fire is no easy task. Should you need help, senior brother and I will do our utmost. Do not hesitate to ask. The letter's front contained only a few brief lines, seemingly torn from some ancient text. The back, however, was filled with references to the pristine and converging water. Xiao Yongling murmured in acknowledgement, sighing in regret. I saw this fly out from the third meditation mat, thinking it was merely some minor commentary on cultivation techniques. I thought its value was low and that fewer people would compete for it. Clearly, I was wrong. He casually handed the manual back to Li Xuanfeng. With little tangible gain between them, the two approached the Great Hall. By now, most of the other cultivators had already fled, either having secured treasures or chasing after others. The area outside the hall was almost deserted. With nothing else to gain, the two moved a few steps closer when a sudden clanging of metal echoed sharply. Both raised their heads toward the starry night sky, their expressions shifting. Throughout their 20-odd hours' journey, the sky above had remained perpetually shrouded in a dim, starlit night. The mist hanging in the air was a subdued gray, and the only sources of light were the glimmers of spells cast by other cultivators. However, in the far west, a dazzling radiance began to rise, resembling the morning sun. The intense golden light spread, casting illusions of golden stones in every direction. Both cultivators felt a wave of dizziness and alarm. Their hearts raced as they instinctively closed their eyes. Almost simultaneously, a deep and melodious bell tone resonated from within the great hall. The sound reverberated, vibrating through their very minds. Dong. Li Xuanfeng moved his lips, attempting to speak, only to find that they refused to open. A sharp pain stabbed his eyes as mana surged instinctively to protect his vision. Outside the hall, the competition was intense, but inside, the atmosphere was one of tense stalemate. Yu Muxian and Tang Shedu stood together, their white and black robes forming a sharp contrast, quietly waiting in the southeast corner. Qing Zhuo, dressed in green-gray with a jade crown perched neatly on his head, stood alone in the west. Nian Yi performed hand seals in the north, while Zhang Yun stood with his hands clasped behind him, the most relaxed of the group. The remaining two individuals each occupied a corner. One was a cultivator holding a gold hammer, his gaze sweeping across the hall continuously. He stood silently in a corner, the token at his waist swaying slightly, faint gray flames flickering around it. Letter 1E5F, letter 1D00, small cap pen, letter 1D428, Aganek, letter Tuthrof. The other was a female cultivator, whose gentle demeanor and striking beauty stood in contrast to the sharpness in her gaze, which was fixed intently on the large. The faded ones present maintained their silence. After several breaths of time, Zhang Yun finally stepped forward. He walked slowly to the front of the hall, his expression serious, and spoke solemnly. Back in the days of the Green Pine Temple, the 6 cultivators of the Changming Hall were genuine prodigies who stirred the winds and clouds of their time. Our Golden Feather sect has always respected these 6 seniors, and since we have little connection to the temple's Dao lineage, our purpose in entering this grotto heaven is not driven by greed." He extended his hand toward the great bell in the center of the hall, adding in a quiet voice, "This time our sect's Taoist masters seek to advance their cultivation. All we wish for is to observe this unspeaking bell, and we will not take anything else." He infused his mana into the bell and began to form seals with his hands, yet the bell remained utterly still. It neither rang nor reverted to its original form. A pity. Zhang Yun sighed softly, turning back to the others and instructing in a low voice, "Close your eyes." At his words, the group seemed to grasp the meaning and closed their eyes in unison. They calmed their minds and steadied their breaths. Only a single breath passed before the starry sky above the hall suddenly lit up. A silver-white, oval-shaped object ascended into view, radiating intense brilliance that drowned out the myriad stars in the heavens. Dong. The group all closed their eyes and remained silent. Zhang Yun had already kneeled reverently on the ground. The grand bell before him began to tremble violently, as though pushed by some invisible force, emitting a resounding chime. A numbing sensation spread through their throats and tongues, rendering them all speechless. One after another, they kneeled down, though not with Zhang Yun's ceremonial reverence, they nonetheless bowed respectfully. A silver-white radiance descended, enveloping the bronze bell that spun incessantly in the air. Gradually it began to shrink, eventually transforming into a yellow streak of light, no larger than a fist. The light shot out from the hall, soaring skyward like a comet defying gravity. The bell slowly merged into the silver-white elliptical object in the sky, its form vanishing entirely. At last, two barriers descended from the upper and lower edges of the elliptical object, gently closing together, little by little, until the object completely withdrew from this realm. Chapter 600, Dividing the Spoils. The radiant light in the sky slowly dissipated, and the numbness on their faces finally faded. Inside the hall, the group cautiously opened their eyes, tears streaming down their cheeks as their reddened eyes adjusted to the scene. With the unspeaking bell leaving this realm, it took over 10 breaths for the residual effects to completely vanish. The group finally regained the ability to speak, though Nianya's voice was hoarse. Taiyuan, true monarch, personally intervened, truly a rare sight, even across centuries. This rarity was no exaggeration. Records of Golden Core Realm cultivators acting directly were scarce, often tracing back a millennium. Zhang Yun, having performed the most reverent bow, slowly straightened himself. He tidied his robes, bowed 3 times toward the west as though deep in contemplation, then cupped his fist toward the group in a silent farewell before calmly departing. The group was visibly shaken, their expressions varied. Yu Muxian wiped the tears from his eyes and used mana to soothe his vision. Only then could he faintly make out the objects before him. He reached for the ornate pouch at his waist and found that the gold essence and silver lining protecting his storage pouch had already melted away. In just the brief moment prior, the gold essence and silver lining had separated distinctly, dividing into a pool of brilliant gold essence and icy, shimmering spirit silver, both lying at his feet. Despite years of cultivation and a normally unshakable temperament, Yu Muxian's expression twisted for the first time in decades as he cursed inwardly, "Yuanwu, he must have gone mad, sending me to seize such a thing. Even Yuanwu himself would kneel here obediently, let alone dare to covet it. How could this be something a Purple Mansion realm cultivator could hope to touch?" His face darkened slightly. Beside him, Tang Shedu, gripping his long halberd, seemed to understand Yu Muxian's frustration and gave a faint, helpless smile. However, the solemn atmosphere left him no opportunity to offer consolation. As Zhang Yun exited the hall, the remaining 6 turned their attention to the 5 jade boxes atop the main platforms. Of those gathered, Mount Changhui, Azure Pond Sect, and Yue Cultivating Sect each represented 1 power, while the remaining 2 were lone cultivators bearing threads of fate, both exuding a presence that discouraged confrontation. Qingzhu scanned the room, mentally calculating the distribution. The numbers aligned perfectly. He thought to himself, the Golden Feather Sect has taken the unspeaking bell. Mount Changhui, Azure Pond, and Yue Cultivating Sect will each receive 1 treasure. The remaining 2 will likely be left for the Purple Mansion realm cultivators to sort out themselves. With that realization, he chuckled lightly and suggested, "Let us divide the spoils, 1 treasure for each of the 5 factions." Tu Longjian curled the corners of his mouth into a faint smile, showing no sign of surprise. In contrast, the female cultivator furrowed her brows slightly, appearing somewhat suspicious of Qingzhu's overly cooperative demeanor. Qingzhu, however, ignored her completely. With a casual wave of his hand, he used his mana to draw one of the jade boxes toward him. The moment he moved, the tension in the room heightened, and the remaining jade boxes quickly flew into each person's hands. Yu Muxian brushed his hand over the surface of his jade box, but it did not open. Looking closer, he noticed its aura was perfectly smooth and integrated, indicating it was sealed with an enchantment. He began forming seals and chanted a spell, Profound Pommel Unbinding Technique. Golden light flickered at his fingertips as the spell's mana surged toward the jade box. Yet the mana slid off effortlessly, having no effect. Yu Muxian frowned, thinking to himself, apparently, only a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator can open this, quite securely sealed. On the other side, Qingzhu gave his jade box a light push, and to everyone's surprise, it opened easily. Just as a look of delight began to bloom on his face, it froze in place. The jade box was empty. The jade box had already been emptied by someone, leaving behind only an empty recess. It appeared that the original item was a long, narrow object about 2 fingers wide. The intricate patterns at the bottom of the recess were designed to fit seamlessly with the long, narrow object that had once rested there. Qingzhu's expression turned grim, while the others all watched him warily, each carefully guarding their own jade boxes. He let out a long breath, then squinted as he tried to discern the intricate patterns left behind. Inwardly, he murmured, Supreme, Chakra. Just as he managed to recognize a fragment of the design, fragments of frost and snow suddenly seemed to emerge in his vision. A faint scent of osmanthus wafted through the air, and a moonlit white glow poured from the jade box, chilling his hands to the bone. He shivered involuntarily, jolting himself awake. When he looked again, the recess at the bottom of the jade box was smooth and empty, devoid of anything. He snapped the jade box shut and tucked it into his storage pouch, his expression dark and his mood sour. Without another word, he left with hurried steps, his hands clasped behind his back. Nian Yi, who had been holding back his laughter, finally couldn't suppress a snort. He cupped his fist toward the others, chuckling, and floated away with an air of nonchalance. The remaining few exchanged glances and silently departed in their respective directions, outside the hall. Li Xuanfeng propped himself up from the ground, supporting himself on one hand while his other reached instinctively for his storage pouch. Pulling out a bottle of spirit water, he splashed it over his face and eyes, feeling an immediate, soothing coolness wash over him. He exhaled softly, blinking his eyes open. Though his vision remained somewhat blurry, it was clear enough to confirm his eyesight was intact. Silver-white flashes of light from earlier flickered intermittently in his mind, leaving him dazed. He muttered, was that a true monarch? As the memory grew hazier, Li Xuanfeng forced himself to refocus. Cooling energy rose from his Shenyang mansion, clearing his thoughts. He quickly shifted his attention to his surroundings, his gaze falling on Xiao Yongling nearby. Xiao Yongling, too, looked somewhat disheveled. After ingesting several pills, he quietly regulated his breathing for a moment before speaking in a low voice. It seems that certain formations within the Great Hall were triggered. We were too close and were caught in the aftermath. Li Xuanfeng nodded in agreement. Only then did he take a proper look around. A cluster of spirit pines had withered entirely, collapsing into a disorderly heap on the ground. When he reached to check his waist, he noticed his spirit armor glistening with crystalline white droplets. His expression shifted slightly. Closing his eyes, he extended his spiritual sense to inspect the armor carefully. He noticed that it felt noticeably heavier than before. After repeated checks, he discovered that the astral silver mercury coating, originally applied to enhance the armor's concealment properties, had entirely leached out, dripping onto the ground in shimmering beads that clinked faintly as they rolled. The spirit armor's concealment function has already been lost. He used his mana to carefully collect the scattered silver mercury, sighing in relief as he murmured inwardly, at least it is only the concealment function that was lost. That could have been disastrous. Li Xuanfeng closed his eyes in thought. The golden light earlier seemed to have subtly altered his qi flow, and he faintly perceived the beginnings of an insight into a breakthrough. If his intuition was correct, once he left the grotto heaven, he could seek a quiet place for secluded cultivation and advance to the next level. Beside him, Xiao Yongling straightened his back, exhaling deeply. As he glanced at the few beams of mana light spilling out from the great hall, he spoke softly, Xuanfeng, are you feeling better? If so, we should leave quickly. That hall has most likely been stripped clean. It would be better to explore the other mountains. If nothing else, we might find something worthwhile in the sea of clouds. Li Xuanfeng gave a slight nod, his mind flashing back to the thoughts he had when first entering the grotto heaven. Without hesitation, he and Xiao Yongling took to the skies, riding the wind toward the distant horizon.